Hello, 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 my friends. It's Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, October 6th. Hold on. Whoops. Sorry about that. It is Sunday, October 6th, and it is time for another live IC support group meeting. These meetings are for patients who struggle with interstitial cystitis, bladder pain, Hunner's lesions, pelvic floor dysfunction, pelvic pain, widespread pain, pudendal neuralgia. If you've got one of those, I am your girl. Now, I have a lot of things that I need to talk about today. We're going to give an update on some of the new research on how to manage pelvic pain and why so many of us struggle with pelvic pain. We're going to take your questions, of course. And normally when I do these meetings, I start with announcements and then I have a little educational thing. But for those who are new, let me just introduce myself. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I'm the longest serving IC support group leader in the United States at actually 31 years now. 31 years as of last month. I bring to you a bunch of college degrees. I've got degrees in chemistry, pharmacology. I have a master's degree in psychology, and the IC network was actually my doctoral dissertation proposal for getting my doctorate in IC, but IC struck. I couldn't sit in a car and get to school to do that. But I'm very happy that 30 years later, my little student project continues to be the number one ranked website and educational resource for all things IC. We're taught in medical schools, we're discussed at conferences, et cetera, et cetera. We also do a lot of IC research through the IC network website too. One of the ways that you can participate is if you sign up for our newsletter. We have a free newsletter. I send out a lot of clinical trial announcements about new treatments that are currently under study. We also have a survey center where you can participate in a variety of surveys that are helping us gather information on IC. So come on over to the IC Network, icnetwork.org. Now, a couple of things. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. You will notice that I was not here last week. I was not here for 2 weeks. And there is an important reason why. Reason number one is that the hurricane wiped out part of our servers and websites, and my store went down. We have a large store where we sell books and heating pads and chair cushions and supplements. So it was a disaster, absolute disaster. I mean, it's been a disaster for everyone. My heart goes out to everyone affected by the hurricane. If there are any IC patients out there who are struggling, please reach out to me. If I can help you, I will help you in any way I can, because believe we are all in this life together. Absolutely, 100%. If you've been displaced and you need your supplement, I will send it to your new address. I'm going to do everything that I can to help you, because I know what it's like to live through environmental catastrophe, because we go through our fires. And as Renee says here, hi, Renee. We have another hurricane that's coming in right now that's going to hit Florida. And we're in the middle of fire season right now. We just had a fire not far away from me a couple of days ago. So, we're all hypervigilant right now when it comes to natural disasters. So anyway, getting back to our shop, it was a stunning blow, because it actually destroyed our server. It actually destroyed backups. And our store was down for a couple of days. We got it back up. We're going to go down again tonight. We believe we might be able to restore what was lost. And so I really, really, really need your patience. If you're buying things from the IC network, or if you have recurring orders or anything like that, we are absolutely open for business. We are shipping every single day. Our challenge, except for Sundays, our challenge is the front end of the store got broken in the hurricane. So we're working on it. You can always call me You can go to icnetwork.org. We have our 800 phone number right there. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm going to make it right with everybody if we miss a shipment. I don't think we will, but you never know. Okay. So I'm sorry for that. But now I I don't even know how to describe what's happened. I almost died 3 weeks ago. Had a great meeting. I mean, 2.5 weeks ago. I had a great meeting. My last great meeting was like 2, 3 weeks ago. A couple of days later, the paramedics were asking me if I wanted to be revived. I had a rotten year, and I really, really appreciate your support, but I want to apologize for not being here for the last couple of weeks because of that. So what happened is I got my COVID vaccine on a Wednesday at noon. And you guys, I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. Y'all know I'm a scientist. I believe in science. I am not an anti-vaxxer in any way, shape, or form. So I because I wanted to hang out with my nephews and their kids, and I knew COVID is going around. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go get that shot. And I'm recovering from breast cancer surgery, as you can tell. I had it at noon. I woke up at 2 in the morning with severe chills and a fever. I mean, I would like I was looking like I looked like I was having a seizure. It was bad. Took a hot shower for almost 30, 45 minutes, got the chills to stop, went back to sleep, woke up at 8 a.m., severe nausea, fever, and my heart was racing so badly that after an hour or two, I called 911. My heart was out of control. Paramedics come, put the EKG on, and they go, "Oh, we need to get you to the hospital right away, ma'am." I'm like, "You think?" They were stunned by what my heart was doing. My heart was out of control. I was in atrial fibrillation, but I was in severe atrial fibrillation. Paramedics come in. I volunteer. I can walk out to the ambulance. Oh, no, ma'am. You need to get in that stretcher right now. And their very first question to me was, do you want to be revived? Do you want to be revived? Because they thought my heart was going to seize. My answer, of course, was yes. I'm young. I've got at least 20 more years. Please revive me. And they put the big pads on. They were getting ready to shock my heart. And they're talking to the doctors at the hospital. We do a siren ride to the hospital. Get to the hospital, into the ER. They immediately set me up to have my heart shocked, load me up with meds. And I'm just like, why is this happening to me? Come on, God, please leave me alone. I had such a rough year. I have my phone out and they explain I'm in AFib. And I immediately start going through the research. AFib is a well-known complication of the COVID vaccine. Myocarditis is a well-known complication of the COVID vaccine. Deaths have happened with heart attacks after the COVID vaccine. Not a lot, very few, but still. It happened to me. I almost died. And I'm still in shock from it. I'm still absolutely in shock by what's happened. I'm on a lot of heart meds right now. I'm on blood thinners right now. I drove myself to the ER at 2:30 in the morning 2 nights later because my heart was racing a little bit, but it was okay. They just told me to come back if that happened, so I drove myself back. But anyway, things seem to have calmed down now. And so that is why I haven't been here for a couple of weeks, is that all the progress I'd made healing from my breast cancer surgery, I feel like I lost. As Renee says, I think your immune system is different since the surgery that happened to me. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that my body is a testimony to what happens after periods of very, very intense stress. And it has been shocking to me that nobody's being educated about the heart complications. And this is what I'm going to say to you. Number one, every single doctor I've seen now since then said, no more vax for you. None. I'm not, and I had tachycardia after a flu vax several years ago, which is why I haven't had the flu vax. This was exponentially worse. And I just want people to know that if you have any history of heart issues at all, you need to read about it first and talk to your doctor about it first. Had I known, and the thing is, guys, I'm a good researcher. I read about things all the time, every day. And yet I was just at the hospital getting a blood test to see where my thyroid levels were. And there was no line. And I thought, oh, I'll just run into the vaccine center and get my vaccine. I really regret it. Because as my doctor said, you'll be on blood thinners for the rest of your life now, probably. So would you do me a favor and please share my story, because I think it's very, very important that anybody with a history of heart issues understand and know that the COVID vaccine is known for this. There is research backing this up. I was reading a big study from 2023. They consider this a deeply concerning adverse event that needs a lot more research. And so I guess the only thing I can say is, I don't know, why did this happen to me? It's baffling, and I'm pretty tired now. I mean, I'm taking it easy, my friends. I'm taking it easy. Oh, well, Rebecca here, it says, hey, it happened to me. Not as bad. My heart went crazy for 4 days. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It is bonkers. Bonkers. Renee said, I had an allergic reaction for 2 months. Doctor told me no more vax, no new meds. Unless life needs to be saved, you can't blame yourself. You didn't know. Thank you for telling us. Yeah, I didn't know. I just didn't know. Okay. Enough on that. Send me strength. Thank you for your prayers. We're going to get through it, but life is bonkers. I'm going to be so happy when 2024 is gone. This has been a crazy year, and I'm ready for it to be over. Okay. Now, since then, we released our latest magazine, the Icy Optimist, and this is our summer-fall issue. And our members can get their magazine if it hasn't already been mailed to you. It is on your member page, but it is not on your member page right now. We're hoping it will be on your member page when they restore all the files tonight. So if you're a member and you haven't gotten this, pop me an email, icnetwork@mac.com. I will send it to you personally, but just know that our member pages all got messed up with the hurricane. But in this issue, just to give you a highlight, I mean, this is where, honestly, I think that I do my best work. We have my editorial is on the cost of medical care, and specifically the cost of IC care. And just so you know, so the cost of IC, we talk about the cost of Elmeron, but it's really not used that often anymore. The average cost of DMSO is $731.99 out of pocket. Botox therapy costs an average of $1,200 a year if it's not covered by insurance. But it's interstem neuromodulation that is the king of long-term costs and fees. The initial test and implant costs about $11,080. If that trial is successful, a permanent device can be $16,336. Battery replacement costs $16,336. And if the device is removed, it's another $16,000. And my point in talking about this is to help everybody understand that, at least in my opinion, this election to me is all about safe and affordable healthcare. And I don't go into parties or anything at all like that. I just present the facts, and I just say you need to look at your party to decide which one you think is going to support you the best. Also in this issue, I have a big article on stress, cancer, and IC. Because we know stress can cause cancer to grow, but we also know stress can also trigger IC for some people. It's not an underlying cause. Well, I got to take that back. I'll be talking about that in a moment. Stress is not considered a cause of IC, but it can certainly worsen and trigger a flare. We talk about tailbone injuries, very, very common in the IC patient population. The latest research, of course. I'm very big on finding some of the hidden underlying causes of IC because for many patients, especially those of you who have done treatments for years and you're not getting better, what our national guidelines say is you stop what you're doing, take a step back and revisit the diagnosis and ask ourselves, what could we have missed? So for example, I was working with a patient who was diagnosed with IC 30 years ago, and she had never gotten better on bladder treatments, never. And, she was one of those patients who was just basically hiding at home, suffering for many, many years, had no clue about all the breakthroughs that we've had, has no clue about the role of muscles. And it turned out she was an elite athlete. In fact, I worked with 2 elite runners, marathon runners, in the last week. And marathon runners are notorious, long distance runners, are notorious for having underlying pelvic floor injuries, pelvic floor weakness, things that can also involve the bladder and trigger some bladder symptoms. Another thing that we found was a very interesting study that crossed my desk a month ago, was a study that was, again, looking for misdiagnoses, and they actually found tuberculosis, bladder tuberculosis, in a small but significant group of patients who were not responding to other therapies. Now, tuberculosis, for those of you who don't know, hold that thought, Valerie. Hold that thought. Tuberculosis is a respiratory condition for most. It's a bacterial disease that attacks the respiratory tract. It can be very mild, and when it's mild, people go out and do their business, not knowing that they're spreading it, because tuberculosis is highly, highly infectious. But in about 30% of tuberculosis patients, it travels systemically. It travels throughout their body, and it can actually travel and arrive in the bladder and infect the bladder. So if your symptoms started after you were traveling, if your symptoms started after you went to Central America, if you went to the Middle East, if you went to Asia, then it's important that we rule out a potential exposure to tuberculosis, because that's completely curable with antibiotics as long as you don't have a drug-resistant form of it. So anyway, there we go on that. Here's another really interesting case of somebody, hi Ann, somebody who developed bladder sensitivity. It turns out for hers started after she had foot surgery. And she was having a hammer toe corrected. Hammer toe is when you've got a toe that's bending down massively, right? And so they had to put in a piece of wire to straighten out her toe. It turned out the wire was made of nickel. And it turned out she was allergic to nickel. And so when they pulled the wire out of her toe a couple weeks later, her bladder symptoms went away. But then she had, I think, another surgery where they installed a titanium plate in her foot. I think it was in her foot. And the symptoms came back. And she's like, but it's titanium. There's no nickel in it. Why would the titanium trigger bladder symptoms? And so once it did its job and her bones healed, they actually removed the plate and her symptoms went away again. And they analyzed it, and it turned out there was nickel in the titanium plate. So metal allergy is another potential trigger for IC symptoms. And so one of the other ones I think is absolutely fascinating is black mold in your home. If you live in a home that is musty, if you live in a home where you can see black mold, understand that black mold can trigger urinary symptoms. I can still remember a patient I worked with a couple years ago. Her whole family was sick. Her IC was terrible. It was out of control, but everybody in the family wasn't feeling well. And they ended up discovering that the water heater had been leaking, and the pad underneath the carpet throughout most of her house was actually filled with black mold. It was a massive, massive growth of black mold. And they had to move out immediately. And it took them like 6 months for everybody to get better. And eventually her IC symptoms went away. So I don't want you to give up. I don't want you to assume that there's no hope. Listen, if you're not responding to typical treatments, that's when we got to think outside the box and ask ourselves, is there anything else that you might have been exposed to or something that might have happened that could explain your symptoms? I have an article on the 10 common mistakes that IC patients make. My writer Stacy has a great article on packing for vacations. Let's see, we got the IC Awareness Month stuff. And then I have to say, I wrote this one in September, the important role of over-the-counter supplements. Now, hold that thought, Janelle. Why did I write that article? Because I was working with an IC patient who was absolutely impoverished. She had nothing. She had no money. And I think she had Medicaid, but even Medicaid was not covering what she needed. So she couldn't afford anything. She couldn't even buy food. And when you think about that patient who's super, super low income, they can't afford traditional treatments. They can't afford $700 for bladder installation. They can't afford $50,000 for neuromodulation. I mean, if it's covered by their insurance, fantastic, that's great. But what happens if they lose their insurance? How will they get that unistim removed if it's malfunctioning, if they lose their insurance? So over-the-counter supplements are an much more affordable option for some patients to consider. And this is not me saying this. This is the American Urology Association saying this. The American Urology Association encourages patients to use and try over-the-counter supplements in their guidelines before you go to the traditional treatments that have a lot more side effects. So, for example, I was working with a patient yesterday who has tremendous nerve sensitivity, and she couldn't take gabapentin. Gabapentin is known for calming nerves down. And she just couldn't take it. And she was like, what else do we have? And their answer was low-dose antidepressant. Well, a lot of us can't take a low-dose antidepressant. I can't. Messes my heart up. So what do we have instead is we've got a supplement called palmitoyl ethanolamide, Peora, which is literally one of our least expensive supplements out there, under $30. And in a study in 2019 was found to reduce the pain and discomfort for 87% of patients. So we've got now some supplements that are really viable alternatives, and I'd be happy to ask questions on that. So anyway, if you're interested in getting our magazine, come on over to the IC Network. You can buy individual copies, but it'd be really, really great if you became a member, because that's what keeps me doing these meetings and answering the phone and keeping our staff going together. All right. IC Awareness Month is over. Because I was having my issues, I could not post our daily facts. So I'm really hoping you guys stepped in and spread the word. Next year is a new year. We'll go for it again next year. And hopefully nothing will be happening next year and we can all dive into it. All right. Now, this is what I'm really excited to talk about today. So Dr. Robert Eckenberg, who is, in my opinion, the best pelvic pain doctor in the country, has written a new book. It's the Handbook on Treating Chronic Pelvic, Genital, and Sexual Pain Disorders. So he sent me an advanced copy. I printed it out, all of 300 pages or whatever, and I've been going through it for him because I'm helping him a little bit with it. But this book is freaking phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So, one of Dr. Eckenberg's passions, because he's 85 years old, he is going to be closing his clinical practice in December, but he is going to be working with patients for as long as he can, for several years to come. He's all there. Don't have to worry about that. But he's 85. He's got to slow down a little bit. So his purpose in writing this book was to really try to create interest and enthusiasm and a guideline for other doctors who want to specialize in pelvic pain. He calls it the Eckenberg Protocol. So this book is really, really, really for clinicians, but it's very, very useful for patients too. But this is about how to set up a pelvic pain practice, how to work with patients, and how to help them thrive, and how to help them get their life back. And his heart is ginormous. His heart is a beautiful thing. So here's Dr. Eckenberg and I had a long conversation last weekend because I called him and raved about the book and just told him how much I loved it and all that sort of stuff. Lori's asking, when will the book be out for sale? I think that he's gonna do one little round of desktop publishing, and hopefully within a couple of weeks. I mean, I think you can get it now, but it's an ebook, and it's what I have right here, but it needs a little bit of layout work. So if you could maybe wait a week or two and let's see if we can get that layout work done, I think it'll be a little bit easier. It's up to him, completely up to him. So here's the point that he makes, and that is that urologists, gynecologists, internal medicine, primary care doctors are not educated in pain science. They're very organ structure driven. So if you go to a urologist and you've got long-term bladder pain, they're going to be asking, what's wrong with your bladder? And they're going to be focused on the organ entirely. They're not focusing on muscles and nerves like they need to. And he has been, for the last 15 years, trying to get professional organizations and trying to get medical schools to add a day of pain science so that they can really help patients understand what's driving this chronic pain that some of us have. So I want you to remember we have 5 phenotypes for IC. I use the Chris Payne 5 phenotype system. Hunner's lesions, bladder wall-driven estrogen atrophy, bladder wall-driven chemical injury, pelvic floor-driven pudendal neuralgia, and widespread pain. And this is where Dr. Eckenberg shines, is in the widespread pain, chronic pain group. So these are the patients who have IC, IBS, vulvodynia, TMJ, fibromyalgia, etc. We now know that that's being driven, that chronic pain is being driven by the central nervous system. So I want to read you a couple of things out of his book, but as an example, so I'm a widespread pain patient. So I had vulvodynia in high school, IBS in my 20s, and yeah, they're all gone. They've been gone now for a while. But now I've been through some big traumas in the last year and a half. Big, ginormous traumas, worst traumas in my life. The death of my parents. I had an emergency gallbladder removal. I've just had a double mastectomy for breast cancer and all the anxiety and trauma that goes with the diagnosis of breast cancer. And now this ridiculous reaction to the COVID vaccine that almost killed me. And I can feel my central nervous system winding up again. Absolutely. I'm having more muscle aches. I'm having more bowel and bladder sensitivity a little bit. I mean, I can absolutely feel that my central nervous system has been traumatized. And that, my friends, is the underlying cause of widespread pain, trauma to the central nervous system, injury or trauma to the central nervous system. So I want to read a couple of areas out of this book because I think, so concept number one, there is a cumulative imprinting of pain neurochemistry in the central nervous system through a person's lifetime that can, under certain circumstances, turn into a chronic regional pain syndrome, such as migraines, fibro, chronic fatigue, pelvic pain, and NIC. So let me say that again. There is a cumulative imprinting of pain neurochemistry in the central nervous system through a person's lifetime that can basically make the central nervous system more sensitive. You know, when you think about it, we've all gone through trauma. We've all gone through physical trauma. We've broken legs. We've broken hips. We've gone through emotional trauma. Everybody goes through grief. We've all gone through stress. And then we've gone through environmental trauma. So how does our body handle that? I mean, that's the real interesting question here. If, for example, you break a bone, yeah, the bone breaks. Yeah, the muscles are traumatized. But what happens to the nerves? You know those old timers out there who they start rubbing their knee and they go, oh, a storm must be coming in. Why are they rubbing their knee? I mean, that's real legitimate pain for them, but why are they rubbing their knee? Because at some point in time, they hurt that knee. They might have broken that knee. And the bone healed and the muscles healed. But what happened to the nerves? Well, injured nerves become sensitive nerves. And that's why you might feel pain in the face of something like changing weather. But it's that regional trauma down in your foot, down in your knee, that affects the nerves regionally. But then it can spread up to the spinal cord. Well, there's locally, regionally, and centrally. So you got local pain, regional pain, and then you got central pain. And they all kind of have the potential of adding up. Okay, let me go to the next one here. Your nervous system has a great memory. According to doctors Berkeley and Eckenberg, the nervous system has cumulatively stored memories of traumatic events throughout one's life, such as physical or emotional injuries, abuse, surgeries, intensive sports activities, and so forth. These are all part of an individual's life history and provide a guidebook to the nervous system as to how to interpret events that are happening right now. Our nervous system uses this information to not only decide whether you feel pain, but how, when, and where the pain shows up based upon what is going on in your body at a certain time. Quote, the problem is that for some people, these accumulated traumas and experiences may result in a condition called central sensitization, which means the central nervous system sends out pain signals in reaction to even small amounts of stimuli. Dr. Eckenberg explains to each of his new patients that pain processing can play amazing tricks on the suffering individual. For example, phantom limb pain is a phenomenon that sometimes occurs following an amputation of limbs or after serious trauma such as war or crush injuries. The person may experience the worst pain ever in the amputated arm or leg, even though the limb is no longer there. In these cases, the brain is being fed old information from the region in the brain where it has remained stored since the original injury. Similarly, women continue to feel uterine and ovarian pain even following a complete removal of those organs. People can enter the cycle of chronic sexual pain from the bladder, lower bowel, and reproductive organs, or after having multiple pelvic traumas, whether they be surgical, accidental, athletic, or all of the above. Dr. Eckenberg reiterated that as any chronic pain syndrome progresses, it takes less and less stimuli to feel the same symptoms, and you may experience pain in unrelated parts of your body. Here is how they described it. Quote, when the nerves get revved up, the nerve message pathways get screwed up. So neural pathways create their own on-ramps, mergers, exits, and detours. Messages go not only from the bladder to the brain, but they start to go back out to the pelvis. And when they're there, they don't always go home. Sometimes they visit the neighbors. Dr. Eckenberg calls this neurologic crosstalk between the organs. For instance, you might have a bowel movement that makes you feel a burning sensation when you pee, or your bladder is in spasm and your vagina starts to burn. You may start feeling labial, vulvar burning pain, and then get a muscle spasm in your back and your joints inflame. You could also have a musculoskeletal issue such as scoliosis, slip disc, back injury, past pelvic fracture, or that eventually translates into stabbing pain throughout your vulva. This crosstalk from your bladder, bowel, or female organs, which can cause severe vulvar or vaginal pain, correlates with why people feel pain in their jaw and down their left arm when they're having a heart attack. In this case, anyway. In another example, say you fell on your butt. You were badly bruised and it hurt. That's acute pain. But after a while, that pain goes away, but the memory of that trauma to your butt gets imprinted in your nervous system, which can later send ongoing pain signals to another part of your body, but usually in the same area. So your butt feels fine, but you might begin to experience persistent vaginal burning. To sum it up, the entire horoscope of chronic pelvic pain and sexual pain is like a row of falling dominoes. Just flick one little black rectangle, and each down piece causes the next to react until the walls of Jericho come falling down. Okay. So think about, what do we know about widespread pain research? Because as a patient, you want to know, why do you have all this pain, for God's sake? Well, number one, it's not your fault. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. I wanted to know why I did. Why did I develop all these pain conditions when I was younger? It made no sense to me. What the research has found is a central nervous system in distress. They have found a central nervous system that's basically stuck in fight or flight. A lot of us have anxiety disorder. What's that anxiety coming from? That's coming from fight or flight. Patients with widespread pain are stuck in fight or flight from trauma. And what the research shows is that for 80% of the kids who develop widespread pain as an adult, there is a major physical trauma, like being hit by a car. And for the other 20%, it's a history of bullying or abuse. That in that environment of trauma, the central nervous system becomes more sensitive. And that sensitivity can spread. That's fibromyalgia. Okay. So one of the examples that Dr. Eckenberg uses in his book that I hope will help you understand processing of this pain, because it's going to give you a really clear plan on what you need to do, is think about an electric guitar. If you want the electric guitar to get loud, you either pluck the string really hard, bam, or you plug it into an amplifier. Okay? Your central nervous system acts as an amplifier. And after trauma, again, physical, whatever. What happens is the amplifier gets wound up. And this is basic pain science. It's very, very well documented and understood. You go to the big pain meetings, this is what they're talking about. They don't talk about this at the IC meetings, and they need to. And that's, again, that's Dr. Eckenberg's approach. So for patients who have widespread pain, we are stuck with an amplifier of the central nervous system that's turning all the pain signals on. So this really then becomes a question of how do we turn off the amplifier? How do we calm the central nervous system down? How do we do that? How did I do that? Okay, because I had terrible pain for, oh my God. I mean, it started in junior high until I was like 35. Terrible pain. My friends were out living their lives. I couldn't do a damn thing but lay in the fetal position. One of the first things that I did that completely changed my life was I got sick of the freaking anxiety and I took a class because I realized that my brain was in this a vicious cycle of anxiety and negative self-talk. And I was having panic attacks all the time. I'd have a panic attack before every doctor's appointment. And that's with a master's degree in psychology. It's one of the reasons why I went to grad school in psychology, was to understand my brain. And I was really successful in grad school. I had a presidential fellowship, and yet I could not stop the panic. And we're good at faking it. You can be really good at faking it. But the reality is that a lot of us are living with anxiety every single day. And it's a constant message over and over and over again. You're worthless. You'll never get better. What if this flare is the worst? What if I can never work again? You get stuck in this vicious cycle that turns up the amplifier. Pain that is accompanied by laughter is minimized by the brain because you're laughing. And if you're laughing, your life is not at stake. Pain that is accompanied by anxiety is intensified by the brain because you're anxious and your brain thinks your life is at stake. So ground rule number one of the ways we bring this overall amplifier down is we got to get that anxiety under control. And I took a fantastic anxiety management class before I even knew any of this that completely changed my life. And I have a video on the IC Network talking about what it taught me, and I'd be happy to talk about that later if somebody wants to talk about that. But once you can get all the adrenaline out of your brain, out of your system, and once we can kind of reprogram and restart the central nervous system, and once we can tell the central nervous system you are completely and totally safe, pain messages are not as amplified. Okay. Another way that we can reset that brain is with medicine. So you can do gabapentin, which will calm nerves down. You can do, this is where they're saying hallucinogenics under a very, very guided program, like Prince Harry, as Prince Harry was coping with the tremendous anxiety that he was struggling with after his mom died. That's one of the things that he did, along with some really good counseling and trauma care. And I'm starting trauma care again on the 15th. I realized, listen, my trauma meter is off the charts right now. I have got to respect the fact that this has been an extraordinary time. And I want to do everything I can to kind of find a way to let go of the trauma and to let go of the anxiety, because I'm a lot more anxious now than I was 2 years ago. And it's just driven by trauma. PEA, Peora, that's an over-the-counter supplement that is known for calming nerves down without the side effects of gabapentin. They can do nerve blocks. Nerve blocks can silence nerves, which can kind of overall kind of calm some of that constant uh, um, saturation. No. Constant repetitive pain messages that might be coming from your pelvic floor, etc., going up spinal cord to your brain. They can silence those potentially with some nerve block. That's one thing for people who have pudendal neuralgia. That's something they can do. You can do some really good mind-body medicine techniques like tapping, emotional freedom tapping. We've done that a couple of times in the meeting where you hit certain points on your face, which kind of captures your brain's attention and kind of resets some of that fight or flight. You can do some really good deep breathing, buzzing, for example. If you do, let's see if I can do it. That sound. That actually can help to reset the nervous system. And a lot of the reading that I'm doing now is really focusing on techniques that are not medication-based, that are very well-founded in science, that can kind of teach my brain that it doesn't need to be afraid anymore. Because as he said, your brain remembers everything. It remembers every trauma. And then when you encounter pain, it looks at those memories to try to understand if this pain is good pain and bad pain. And that's why a very, very minor event, like the smell of a barbecue, can trigger trauma in somebody who's been through a wildfire. That's PTSD. So this book is lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. He says here, the Eckenberg protocol marries the biopsychosocial approach and clinical awareness of 21st century neuroscience to the treatment of chronic pelvic pain. So I will be talking more about this. There's a big discussion about PGAD in here. I have so much highlighting in here. So he's talking about the volume dial of the amplifier. Research has shown that there's about a 20% chance of individuals having a genetic predisposition for such a dial. Cumulative trauma over a lifetime tends to turn the volume up so that even mild stimuli reach the brain dialed up as if from gigantic speakers at a rock concert. This uninvited explosion of pain can be short and intense or prolonged and agonizing. In simplistic terms, this is a description of chronic pain, an actual physiologic chemical difference in the nervous systems of chronic pain patients. And in this model, the dial being turned up, you can see that the generators outweigh the inhibitors. Although the concept of generators overwhelming inhibitors come back down from the brain when describing chronic pain, it is also important to understand when the opposite occurs. Anyway, that's a whole nother section. Let's see if there's one other thing here. He says, nonetheless, I described those types of incidents to patients to explain that what we are ultimately attempting to do for our chronic pain is to allow for those inhibitors to be released in a controlled manner when flares are occurring, to balance the chemistry and not allow, quote, the dial to be turned up as much as it has been trained to do in the past. It is what I mean when I describe rebooting the system. There are multiple ways for that to happen, but the first is educating all of our patients from the start that chronic pain is an overprotector and needs to be downregulated as researched in the science of pain processing. It's just, all this new research about widespread pain out here, and Allison says here, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is a brain-based approach, evidence-based treatment for PTSD used worldwide as a first-line treatment for PTSD and provides immense relief for trauma symptoms. Most effective treatment for relief I have seen in over 30 years as a therapist. Allison, thank you so much. And actually, I'm starting EMDR this month. I mean, when you're the patient, like there's a part of you that just it's just it just you don't even want to talk about it. You're just done. Just leave me alone. I will just live with this. And honestly, that was kind of how my body and my brain has acted in the last couple of years. It's like, I mean, my stress management skills are really, really good. Obviously, they're very, very good. But exceptional circumstances require exceptional treatment. And I've come to realize that I can't be passive anymore. I can't do this alone anymore. That the stress is too real. It's too big. And I don't want to live with anxiety and trauma for the rest of my life. I don't. I just don't. I want to, and again, we kind of had this like perception of mental illness and perception of what's wrong with you and it's your fault and it's all in your head and that we've all lived with at one point in time. And it's really not that at all. It's trauma. It's what happens to our brain and our nervous system physically, physically, when you have been traumatized. And it's about utilizing new techniques that can reverse that amplification that we're seeing in trauma patients. And so anyway, so it's been kind of a reckoning for me because it's kind of been an emotional reckoning for me. Because I get to go, oh God, finally my life explained. My life has been explained. Now I understand why all of this happened. And there's anger that comes with that. There's frustration that comes with that. There's disappointment in doctors for missing it for so long. And so, like literally right now, October 2024 is the best time ever in the IC movement because we can now provide a custom individualized treatment plan based upon your unique case of symptoms. We're long past the days of giving patients Elmeron, giving patients a diet, and sending them on their way. We know that does not work. That doesn't work for the Hunner's lesion patient. That doesn't work for the widespread pain patient. And now we know why so many research studies failed. Because you can't put apples, oranges, and bananas in the same study and expect a positive result. We now phenotype. We have to figure out what group you're in to figure out the right treatments for you. I have a perfectly healthy bladder. There is nothing wrong with my bladder other than a little bit of estrogen atrophy. I am a muscle nerve patient, 100%. And now that I'm doing muscle therapies and nerve therapies, I am 95% better than I was. But additional trauma can tweak that nervous system again. And that's where I'm at. Additional traumas tweak my nervous system. I'm going to shut that sucker down. I am prepared to finally do some of the emotional work that I've needed to do. There was this great quote. Oh, it's a great quote that talked about, you know what? Hold on. Let me see if I can find it for you because it's on my Twitter page. Let me see if this computer is logged in. I guess because I really now realize that I have a little bit more work to do on some of my trauma from when I was younger. I just do. I do. And I want to do it. So hold on, let me see. Let me see if I can find this. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'm doing a lot of kind of inspirational quotes and things like that because I'm finding them very, very comforting. I'm Icy and Jill on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. It's Twitter. Um, like instead of saying I'm damaged, I'm broken, say I'm healing, I'm rediscovering myself, I'm starting over. But here, hold on. Let me just see if I can find that quote. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life. And I just want to ICN Jill. ICN Jill. Okay, so anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about the widespread pain patient, that concept of an amplifier, that patients with widespread pain have an amplifier that's amplifying their their pain messages more intensely than they should be. And our collective goal now and our personal goal on a daily basis has to be try to reduce the volume to calm that amplifier down. I think one of the things that we really, really, really have to do is stay off of social networking. Like I was on it last night and I just, like after 30 minutes of going through stuff, and I was just being bombarded by sad animal stories, uh, by the hurricane, by hostile politics. And here I'm trying to go to sleep and I'm sending all these ridiculous stress messages into my brain. Yikes. Yeah, I'm really going to work on trying to change that. Okay, let's go back now and we're going to take some of your questions. Now, you guys, what's the rule? Be the squeaky wheel. If you asked a question and I missed it, ask it again because obviously I go down sidetracks. So we are simulcasting right now. When I'm looking here, I'm looking at Facebook. When I'm looking here, I'm looking at YouTube. So let's go to YouTube first. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie says, "I'm glad you're doing okay." Oh, you had your double mastectomy in May. We should compare notes, girl. I'd love to talk to you about that because I have a lot of sensitivity along my incisions. It's crazy. I was having a lot of trouble this morning getting comfortable, to be quite honest. So Valerie says, "I'm relocating to Virginia Beach in April for work. Can you recommend an IC friendly provider in that area?" We have a doctor list on our website. You can go there. I will tell you, maintaining what doctor lists is very, very difficult, especially after COVID. So many things have changed. So I don't know what we have in Virginia. What I can tell you, though, is being in that part of the country is good because you happen to have Dr. Robert Evans up at Wake Forest in North Carolina for a fantastic second opinion. He is considered the best IC doctor in the country. I say that because for the many years that we did Doctor of the Year, he won every single time by hundreds of votes. Patients love him. Janelle says, "Have I heard of Dan Buglio, who believes in the no pain theory? We can train our brain to be healed by training the brain." Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. But it's about training the central nervous system. It's about downregulating the central nervous system. Diane says, "I wonder if I have candida infection in my bladder because I have burning, itching, and pain in my urethra and vulva with frequent urination." Diane, look at estrogen atrophy. That dry skin from the loss of estrogen can cause burning, itching, and pain, especially in the urethra and on the vulva. So my first suspect would be estrogen atrophy, depending upon your age. How would you get it treated? You would go to your OBGYN. Cardsi said, "Just heard about your AFib after COVID vaccine, not another one. I bet you were not told of the AFib risk prior." Yes, I was not, and I'm really furious about that. When that happened, my very first thing when I got home was I filed an adverse event reports with the VAERS database, and then I called Kaiser and I tried to file one with them, but they kind of glossed over it. I really think that there needs to be really good education about the risk of heart issues now with the COVID vaccine, because what the research shows is the more vaccines you get, the greater the risk. Marcella says, I was diagnosed with Hunner's lesions a year ago and I've had 2 fulgurations. Can you get IC flares even after fulguration with Hunner's? I'm taking antihistamines and allocaps. Marcella, yes, you can, because ultimately the challenge here is to try to figure out what's driving those Hunner's ulcers. So there are 3 prevailing theories on what causes Hunner's lesions or Hunner's ulcers. Theory number 1 that's absolutely supported by research is that it's a virus, a viral infection in your bladder wall, specifically the Epstein-Barr virus or the polyoma BK or JC virus. I was working with a patient last week who actually had Hunner's lesions, and she had tested positive for Epstein-Barr. So this research was started first in Europe about 6, 7, 8 years ago. We have multiple studies now that have found viral infection in the urine of patients with Hunner's lesions. We are now at the point of testing antivirals, antiviral medications such as Valtrex for patients who have identifiable virus in their urine. And you can find that information on the IC Network website. It's in our magazine. I think in this magazine, hold on. I have the latest research here. Okay, it's not in this one. There are, let's see, identifying Hunner's lesion patients via their genes. That's interesting. How often should Hunner's lesions be treated with fulguration? That's another thing. The authors concluded that the majority of Hunner's ulcer patients will require repeat fulguration within 2 years and may benefit from a close follow-up. So it was in the, I think the last viral study. When did that come out? Like last spring? So it's not in this magazine. It's probably in my last magazine. Okay, so concept number 1, Hunner's lesions are a viral infection. And so if that's the case, one of the things that I would start immediately is lactoferrin. So in August, we had a new study come out from Europe, which tested lactoferrin in patients with IC and specifically patients with Hunner's lesions. So 31 patients were in that study. They took lactoferrin for 3 months, and it was a kind of a specific treatment protocol. It's 1,000 milligrams the first week, then it was 400 milligrams for 2 more weeks, and then it was 200 milligrams for 3 months, if I remember correctly. And I will point you to that study. At the end of that study, 28 out of 31 had no IC flares, no IC symptoms, and the other 3 had 1 flare after treatment. So the question then is, what is lactoferrin and what does it do? Well, lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum. Lactoferrin is an essential part of building an immune system in infants. So, the first couple of nursing after a baby is born are the most important part, because that's when essential nutrients are given to support the baby's biome and to support the baby's immune system. Lactoferrin is a big part of that. Lactoferrin has natural antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral effects. So in this study of these 31 patients, they did 2 other things that were really, really important besides monitoring symptoms. They did blood testing to look at the level of inflammation in their blood, specifically interleukin 6, and they looked at the bladder. They documented what the bladder looked like, the level of redness, and the presence of Hunner's lesion. After lactoferrin, something remarkable happened. The inflammation dropped, the interleukins dropped, the bladder went from red to pink, and Hunner's lesions were not found. So this was using bovine lactoferrin as a product called Valpath, which is available in Italy, but it's not available here. I'm actually talking with the company about that. So I brought in a lactoferrin from Australia in the IC network shop. There's a lot of lactoferrin out there. There's good lactoferrin, there's cheap lactoferrin, there's bad lactoferrin, in terms of bioavailability and how much is in there. I chose to go with an Australian source of lactoferrin because they're getting it from cow's milk. And the problem with cow's milk right now in the United States is bird flu. There's a lot of bird flu happening. They're finding bird flu in milk in grocery stores. If you're in an area where there's a big bird flu issue like there is here in California. And so I think to kind of since we don't really understand the ripple effect of that, the ramifications of that, and that's currently under study, and they're trying not to create panic and yada, 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 I figured that getting lactoferrin from another source where bird flu is not an issue made the most sense to me. So you can try, there's lactoferrin right now in the IC Network shop if you want to try it. And I figure you got nothing to lose. There were no side effects in that study. I asked the company about patients who are lactose intolerant. They said they have not found that these patients have a bad reaction to lactoferrin. That there's not enough lactose in it to provoke a typical lactose reaction. So that would be fascinating to try some lactoferrin, just out of curiosity. I can give you that study. If you just Google interstitial cystitis lactoferrin, that will take you to the National Library of Medicine, and that is where you can actually read that study. That study crossed my desk in late July, early August. The second theory of a Hunner's ulcer is that it is caused by something called posterior fornix syndrome. So there was a case study published a couple years ago of a woman who had severe Hunner's lesions, and she had a severe prolapse. And when they went in to repair the prolapse, they made a remarkable discovery that her uterus was facing backwards. The front of her uterus was facing backwards, and the back of her uterus was facing frontwards. Okay, why? Because one of the ligaments that normally holds the uterus in place had broken. And interestingly, like I swear in the last 10 days, I talked to somebody else who had the same thing. The exact same thing. Okay, and so her uterus was free swinging, and she was developing a strangulation injury. The tissues and the nerves, everything were twisting up at the top. It was not a good environment. Well, what is that? Oh, wow, look at that. A eagle just flew over my house. Low, how cool is that? Okay, so when they surgically repaired that and they untwisted the uterus and they got it tacked up in its correct location, and they restored the blood supply and everything, something remarkable happened. Her Hunner's lesions completely disappeared. She is considered a complete and total cure. So that supports the theory, the dominant theory of neuroinflammation, that there is a nerve that is being irritated. Irritated nerves release substances that damage tissue. And so if we can calm the neuroinflammation down, it's going to stop releasing these substances that could be causing the ulcers. Here, hold on a second. All right, let's go to Facebook here real quick. Cardstee, hold on that. Here, hold on. Janelle's asked, wait. Oh, you guys, you have so many questions. It's great. Bear with me here. I swear I'm going to try to get to them all. Sherry says, is lactoferrin good for men? Sure, why not? No side effects. There's lactoferrin in all of our secretions. There's lactoferrin in your tears. There's lactoferrin in your saliva. Lactoferrin is found throughout the body. Diane says, I have estrogen atrophy and I've been on vaginal estrogen cream for 2 years, so I thought it was better. Is there more that I can do? You might need a little bit more, or you might benefit from something like vulva balm to use on the outside to protect the skin. I mean, the reality, my friends, is we're never going to have 20-year-old bladders anymore. We're never going to have 20-year-old skin anymore. We're older. We're just older. I was working with a 41-year-old who was entering menopause a couple days ago. And yeah, we can give that skin estrogen to try to make it stronger, but the hard reality is that even with estrogen, that skin is not quite as robust and it's going to be a little bit drier. And so it can be really helpful to have something like vulva balm. This is one of my favorite products in the IC Network shop, vulva balm. It's very, very popular. And so this is a very, very, very light gel, an oil-based gel with organic avocado, olive, and sea buckthorn oil. And the consistency is perfect. It's very close match to the normal consistency of the moisture on your skin. And remember, it needs to be an oil because the purpose of the mucus down there is to act as a barrier to push away urine, to push away the irritants in urine. You can't just soak yourself with water. That's not going to do anything. You have to have an oil on that skin to push away urine. And so, yes, you can only use your estrogen 2 or 3 times a week, but you can use this several times a day. And it's really, especially use it before you urinate to get a good area of protection, or to use it before you go swimming if you're a swimmer. Janelle's asking if we have success calming nerves with low-dose naltrexone. A little bit. It's just not studied enough. And Cardsi says Dr. John Campbell on YouTube is an advanced nurse educator who's been covering the problems of research with COVID. Oh, thank you. I will look at that, hon. Thank you. All right, let's go to Facebook here. I'm sorry, Facebook. Okay. Kathleen is saying, so sorry you went through your COVID thing. When you had yours, you had 8 hours post second injection, massive inflammatory reaction, heart, bladder, whole body shaking. That's what I had, the whole body shaking. And you weren't sure you were going to live. I didn't think so either. And I was alone too. And I finally called 911. Kayleen said, hey girl. Kayleen said, doesn't secondhand smoke cause bladder problems? Absolutely. Not only does secondhand smoke cause bladder problems, but it can cause bladder problems in children of smokers. That children of smokers, if you have secondhand smoke in your home, those children can have the symptoms of IC, frequency, urgency, pressure, pain from the irritation from the cigarette smoke. And worse, guys, you have to understand that the byproducts of smoking, the way your body gets rid of them is through your bloodstream, then through your kidneys and into your urine. So what happens is a lot of the carcinogens, the great majority of carcinogens in cigarette smoke end up in your urine, where they're literally sitting in your bladder, in your full bladder, touching the cells. And what does a carcinogen do? A carcinogen triggers the growth of cancer. You know, it's like a key that turns on growth. And so here we've got a stew of carcinogens sitting in your bladder for long periods of time. That's why cigarette smoke is the #1 cause of bladder cancer. But cigarette smoke for the IC patient is particularly devastating. Think about Hunner's lesion patients. If you're a Hunner's lesion patient and smoking, you're foolish, because you literally have a wound in your bladder wall. And you're now allowing carcinogens to enter deep inside your bladder wall. That's cancer waiting to happen, because now you're getting the carcinogenic effects deep inside the bladder wall structure. And also, if you have estrogen atrophy, that loss of estrogen results in a tremendous loss of the mucus of your bladder wall, the gag layer of your bladder wall. So now that cigarette smoke is encountering your bladder wall, reaching the cells of your bladder wall, again, where it can trigger the growth of cancer. So smoking, excellent point, Kayleen. Denise said, my IC is so much better now. I haven't had any pain. For me, it was being on a low acid diet, going to pelvic floor therapy, taking an antihistamine. I also got my IBS under control. and also using an estrogen cream. Denise, keep it up, girl. Keep it up. You're doing great. But she says, I live in constant fear of it coming back. It traumatized me, so painful. So one of the big points that really, really helped me is when I did a voiding diary. I can tell you exactly when I did it, the summer of 1993, and I was diagnosed in 1992. The summer of 1993 was absolutely the most worst pain I've ever had. Like, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't lay down. All I could do was pace, and I was hysterical. ER over and over and over again. The pain was insane. And I did a voiding diary where I started tracking my symptoms over time. And I was tracking how often I peed, and I still have the original journals. They're somewhere here in this office. So I was tracking how often I peed, and then I was also rating my pain on a scale of 1 to 10. And here's what I learned from that voiding diary, is that I always flared the day that I ovulated, and it always went away a day or two later. And so I began not to fear that flare. It's like, oh, I'm just ovulating, not a big deal. No reason to jump on what we call the runaway train of emotion if you flare the day that you ovulate. Not a big deal. It's just a little mini flare, and you got to keep it in context. And that was when literally I just stopped being afraid of flares, because I know what to do. I know what to do for a pelvic floor flare now, because now my flares are pelvic floors and stress. And so if you're looking for flare management tips, come on over to the IC Network website, icnetwork.org, and sign up for our free newsletter. And our gift to you is our 40-page flare management guide, where we break down the specific types of flares you can have and hour-by-hour rescue plans. So flares don't scare me. Bladder flares don't scare me anymore. They just don't. What scares me is when my heart gets bunkers. But I have to take the fear out of that too. I have to take the fear out of that. And that's my goal. Trauma is trauma. It's shocking that it happens, but it's a combination of education, learning about it so that it doesn't scare you quite so much, combined with having really good self-help tools so that when it happens, you know what to do, combined with potentially having medication. Cardsty says, your sensitivity might be seen as a gift. Perhaps in cave days, you would have spotted the lion or the dangerous predators before others. Sadly, we still live in a world of profit predators. I agree with that. And listen, every tribe needed somebody who had a good sense of taste and smell, because we were the ones who could tell if the water was good or bad. The other thing that's common with people who are very, very sensitive is we tend to be very empathic. We tend to feel the pain of others. So like in my work, working with patients, which I love to do, I love talking with patients. But at the end of the day, I have to kind of protect my more sensitive nervous system, so that I don't get overwhelmed by, some of your stories, which are really tragic. But we're going to make it better together. Rebecca says, I think I'm medication sensitive, so I'd like to try a single supplement, one at a time. Is there a good PEA supplement? Yeah, Peora. It's in the IC Network shop. It's what I take. That's the one I trust. I took the IC PEA study to that company and said, can you make us a PEA supplement? That's Peora. And it's also happens to be a very, very, very affordable one. So give it a try. It's on the front page of the IC Network shop. And again, for people who are coming in late, please know that the hurricane blew out our server farm where our store lived, our website store lived. And so we were down for a couple of days. And then they were able to get us back up and running, but the backup was incomplete. And just chaos, utter and total chaos, moving things, setting up new servers, all that sort of stuff. Our store is going to be down again tonight, as they're going to try to do a full restore of everything. So if you go to your member page right now, it's 6 months old. It doesn't have the 2 new magazines in it, but I'm gonna let them try to fix it before I go in and manually fix it. And some of the products might be missing or product descriptions might be missing. So for example, the lactoferrin is in the shop, but none of the descriptions are in there yet. Because we're trying to hope that the backup restores all that work I did and my team did last summer. So crossing fingers. So please be patient. We are shipping every day. You can just call us and place your order. You don't have to do it online. We have an 800 number, 800-928-7496. 800-928-7496. So I am not sure what our store is going to look like tomorrow. It's going to be, yikes, crossing fingers. It's been a very stressful week for that too. Sharon, you almost tried something, but it was $450. I don't know what that was. Hold on a second. Somebody's asking, what is Osphena? It is a prescription oral pill used to treat moderate to severe vaginal dryness and painful intercourse. And what's Gynatrop? I'm not familiar with Gynatrop. Let's look it up. Gynatrop is a hyaluronic acid vaginal dryness suppository. Or no. Yeah. No, it is. So it's a vaginal moisturizer. I'll have to see if I can bring that into the IC Network shop. Let me see if I can. Hold on. I got to write a note to myself. That would be a good product for us to add. The fat-acting, non-hormonal option that eliminates vaginal dryness. We'll see. Thanks for this suggestion. I appreciate that. Allison says, if you're interested in doing the EMDR therapy, you can go to emdria.org to find a list of therapists in your city or state. EMDRIA. That's the EMDR International Association. Thank you, honey. I did go there, and ironically, there's an EMDR therapist like 3 blocks away. I can't believe it. But I'm going to do Kaiser, my insurance first, but we'll see. Denise said, what would cause the bladder to feel weird sometimes when I lay on my side? Well, anytime your symptoms change with body position, we're going to look first at muscles and nerves because that's what really changes with body position. Then the second thing that we're going to look at is, if you have something like a Hunner's ulcer or a very, very irritated bladder, it doesn't mean the whole part of the bladder is involved. It can just be one spot. So if you had a Hunner's ulcer on the left side and you tried to sleep on your left side, well, urine would collect on the left side and go into the ulcer. Therefore, those patients need to sleep on their right side and vice versa. So anytime pain is positional, anytime pain is in one specific location over and over again, we need to look at that a lot more closely. What structure is in that location? As an example, a friend of mine, a gentleman who had been diagnosed with IC and pelvic pain, he had pain in one very, very specific spot every single time. And it's like, honey, that's not IC. It was a spot in his prostate. I said, that's not IC. We have to figure out what is at that spot. And it turned out he had gangrene in a duct inside his prostate. And it took them a long time to find it. It was the result of another surgery that went bad. Sharon says, no one ever told me Tagamet helps IC. I have pounding pain. Well, Tagamet is an acid reducer. So, Sharon, based upon phenotyping, Tagamet would be the most helpful for somebody with Hunner's lesions or somebody with estrogen atrophy. Bladder wall pain is very sharp and shrill. People don't normally describe bladder wall pain as pounding pain. I would want to know a lot more about your pain, hun. Number one, where is it? Is it in your urethra? Is it in your bladder? Is it in your vagina? Is it in your rectum? Number two, does it get worse throughout the day? Or does it get better throughout the day? Number two, what makes it worse? What makes it better? And what triggers that pounding pain? I will tell you, in my pelvic floor, what I get, and I had it last night, if I sit too long in certain chairs, I get this ridiculous muscle spasm in my pelvic floor, and it does this. I can feel the flickering. I can feel the vibration. And sometimes it wakes me up at night, and my whole body is doing that, which sucks if you've had tachycardia, because you think it's your heart racing, and it's not. Your heart's fine. It's this vibration, this fluttering from these messed up pelvic floor muscles. So if you could describe your pain a little bit more, we can talk about it a little bit more. Sharon says, where's the vulva? The vulva are the lips on the outside. Marilyn says, can you recommend a D-Manos not made in China? Please explain what it's supposed to do and not do. D-Manos is not in the IC protocol at all. What D-Manos has the potential of doing is it binds to E. coli in urine. So if you're struggling with recurring UTI and we're trying to reduce the overall numbers of E. coli in your urine so that they're not infecting your bladder wall as easily, D-Manos has the potential of doing it. Only for E. coli, not for other infections. But we've got something way better now, and that is lactoferrin, because that same research team that did the IC study a year earlier proved that lactoferrin was very successful at preventing E. coli-based recurring bladder infection. So instead of doing the D-Manos, I would make an about face and go straight for the lactoferrin. I can pull up those research studies and read them to you if you want to hear about them. That's the big thing. So the first, the biggest breakthrough was phenotyping. The second big breakthrough was understanding widespread pain is driven by the central nervous system. The third big breakthrough was the discovery of PEA, palmitoyl ethanolamide, to calm nerves down, because that's something we can all do at home easily, no side effects in the IC study. And now the fourth big breakthrough, which I consider maybe the biggest of all, is the lactoferrin breakthrough, the lactoferrin research. It's just worth a try. And it's not for the rest of your life. It's like literally just for a couple of months. No side effects in the IC and recurring UTI study. Affordable. If there's a shot, it'll help. Why? It's an option that's worth exploring. Sharon says, I have fibromyalgia too, and my sense of smell is ridiculous. So you're like me, honey. Your central sensitization is very sensitive. So you've got to do things that calm nerves down. Calms nerves down. Rebecca says, you have PEA without the other ingredients. Peora has other things in it, so I want to try the PEA by itself. You can find PEA by itself on Amazon. In fact, I have some powdered PEA that I was going to put in lotion to put on my surgical incisions. The problem with PEA is it doesn't dissolve well. It needs kind of an oil base to dissolve. And so It's I'm trying to remember the word they use. Their in their description, their pharmacology description. It's like it's a non-soluble something something. So having it in at least in a capsule that would help it be delivered reasonable. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, and I'd have to look at the research again because I don't remember it off the top of my head. Denise says she does not have Hunners. Okay, so Denise, if you don't have Hunners, but you still have that pain when you're on one side, then it's neuromuscular. Got to be neuromuscular. So could you have an ovarian cyst on that side? Could you have a fibroid tumor on that side that when you lay down, the fibroid tumor pushes against your bladder? Could you have tight muscles on that side, squeezing a nerve in a certain body position? Sharon says, when I sit down, I almost feel like the chair is moving. Exactly, honey. That's a fluttering of the pelvic floor. I am having it right now on my left butt cheek. It's around the sit bone in my left butt cheek, and it's between my sit bone and my rectum, but it's also on the outside of my sit bone. And that is why I sit in a chair cushion. I sit on a waffle cushion. It's in a right? So this is the cushion that I use if I'm having pain in my glutes. If I'm having a pain like in my rectum or something like that, I'm going to use our cushion that has a groove down the middle. And the only reason I have this in a pillowcase is because it gets hot if I'm wearing shorts, and I'm wearing shorts right now underneath this top. I did find another chair cushion. Let me go get this other chair cushion. Hold on a sec. You know, when you're recovering from surgery, you sit a lot. You sit a lot. And I have to say that my sit bone pain got a lot worse in the 6 weeks after my surgery. And so, I mean, I'm just sitting a lot. And so I ended up getting this chair cushion. And it works for that sit bone pain. But there are some really good physical therapists on YouTube that give you all sorts of things. I think I have bursitis in an area in my left sit bone, an old injury. So anyway, that is called a Cushy Tushy. We do not sell it, but you can get that on Amazon. All right, hold on a sec. So Sharon, understand that vibration, that's not going to respond to estrogen. That vibration is a mechanical problem. You're having a problem with a muscle and a nerve. And so that's physical therapy. It's very, very important that you go to a physical therapist and you have a proper pelvic floor assessment. You know, and I also understand too, if you have Hunner's ulcers are painful. How does your body try to protect you from that pain? By getting tight. It tightens the muscles. So yes, you have Hunner's ulcers, but you also have pelvic floor dysfunction from the pain caused by the Hunner's ulcers. And so it's really, really important that we work on keeping these muscles relaxed and healthy. There are devastating effects to long-term tight muscles. It's called ischemia. Those tight muscles squeeze blood vessels, they squeeze nerves, and they restrict blood supply. And if your bladder's only getting half of the normal blood it needs to be healthy because of those tight muscles, it's going to affect your bladder. So we always want to work on those muscles separately and keep them in shape. Sharon says your pain is in the front, pounding. Where in the front, hun? Can you be a little bit more descriptive? Kathleen asking lactoferrin. Yes, lactoferrin. We have a new study in August of this year that found that lactoferrin was quite successful in reducing the symptoms of IC, but it also reduced inflammatory markers in bloodstream, and it reduced and eliminated Hunner's lesions. That red skin in the bladder became pink and healthy after a 3-month course of lactoferrin. Lactoferrin is a simple protein found in colostrum. It is an essential part of our immune system. It is a way a mother gives a baby, a newborn baby, some defenses. It has natural antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral effects. So we have an IC lactoferrin study that came out from Europe in August that was spectacularly successful. And the previous year, they did the same study with recurrent UTI, and that also was spectacularly successful. And so it's kind of a what do you have to lose kind of situation. I mean, yes, people want big double-blind placebo-controlled studies. I understand that. Again, I'm a scientist. I understand that to get lactoferrin added to big guidelines, we would need bigger studies. But the thing is that the money isn't available for the bigger studies right now. It's just not. Most of the big treatments failed, and the drug companies backed off. They saw developing new treatments for IC to be a kind of a loss leader. No, that's wrong. Just a loss altogether. We do have a couple of studies, though, one of which is Purdue, which is, I'm so impressed by the studies, by the companies that are actively exploring new treatments. And we're doing clinical trial recruitment right now for a fascinating new study. And so if you belong on our mailing list or you're on our Facebook page, or I just circulate it through social media, it's on the front page of the IC Network website. Any opportunity we have to try a new therapy is worthy of your consideration. Number one, you have a chance to work with some of the best doctors in the world. Number two, your care is free. And it's often a great way to get in the door of some of these bigger IC clinics where it might take months to get a regular appointment. But if you sign up for a clinical trial, or at least you go have a screening, it gets you in the door at a chance to meet them to see if you kind of like them and their approach. So if you're interested in the clinical trials, come on over to the IC Network website. You'll see it right on the front page, icnetwork.org. Okay, so hold on a sec. Marlia says, I'm a big time fight or flight anxiety person. If I get stressed, my heart pounds and my face gets all hot and red. I have estrogen atrophy and use estrogen cream. I hear many people take antihistamines. Would antihistamines help with the flushing, but then be a problem and make my extreme dryness in my vagina worse? Isn't that a good question? One of the treatments for IC is hydroxyzine, also known as Atarax or Vistaril. I took it for many years. It acts as an antihistamine in the bladder, and it also has a beneficial side effect of being an anti-anxiety agent or having an anti-anxiety effect. You take it at dinner time. It helps you go to sleep at night. And then when you wake up in the morning, you should not have drowsiness throughout the day, but you don't take it during the day because it would make you drowsy. Quercetin, which is an over-the-counter supplement, is also an antihistamine, so you could start with quercetin first. That's why it's in almost all the supplements for urinary tract issues, the bladder builders, the bladderettes, etc. You can't look to pills to fix underlying fight or flight. Your central nervous system is in fight or flight because of something that happened: physical trauma, emotional trauma. And the way we calm that central nervous system down is by proving to your brain that you're safe. So understand, fight or flight is controlled by your brainstem. This is the most primitive part of your brain. There is no cognition happening in the brainstem. The brainstem has one job: to save your life. And the way it's trying to save your life is by monitoring your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you see? Is it a fire or a puppy? What do you hear? Is it screaming or your favorite music? What do you smell? What are you tasting? Is it good or bad? So the brainstem, the sympathetic nervous system, monitors you 24 hours a day looking for threats. And if it finds a threat, it takes over control of your brain. And it triggers the fight or flight or freeze response. So basically, it turns the amygdala on the brain. The amygdala takes over and it prepares your body to fight or flee or whatever. Okay, so how does it do that? It does that with adrenaline. It raises your heart rate, it raises your blood pressure, it tightens your muscles, and prepares you to fight. Okay, that's the genesis of the fight or flight response. That your brainstem has sensed a threat and it's taken over, taken control. Now, the challenge is, and what they found with widespread pain patients, that normally fight or flight turns itself off when the threat is gone. So if you see a fire and you call the fire department, they come out, they put the fire out, the fire's gone, the threat is gone, fight or flight is supposed to turn off. The parasympathetic nervous system is supposed to retake control of the brain and calm everything down. It lowers your heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, relaxes your muscles. But for the widespread pain patient, that's not happening. That we're stuck in fight or flight. And they've done that by looking at MRIs of the brain. And they've been doing that for about 10 years now. I didn't talk a lot about it because I thought it was kind of scary, but now it's not scary at all. There's a total happy ending here. Now that we know it's the central nervous system that's driving a lot of this, we have a new target for treatment, which is the central nervous system. And so we have to, the way we do that, there were a lot of different ways that we do it, but kind of fundamentally, we have to prove to your brainstem you're safe. It does not need to be in fight or flight at this very moment. You are completely and totally safe. We have methods that will turn off fight or flight. I can turn off fight or flight in 5 minutes in you if we did a specific exercise. And so your brain has been habituated into fight or flight. This is very common with people who grew up in the home of a violent parent, an alcoholic, people who have witnessed violence. In my case, I grew up in a neighborhood with a kid who became a rapist and a murderer, and I was one of his many victims. I did not leave my home without fear for more than a decade. That put my brain into fight or flight. My brain was in fight or flight from 4th grade all the way through to when I was 35, when I took my first anxiety management class. And it is such a relief to not be in fight or flight. And now I'm back in fight or flight a little bit because of the trauma of the last year. And I'm working really hard to tell my brain I'm safe. So if you want me to do that exercise, I'm happy to do that exercise with you right now. Take 5 minutes, super easy. And you got to do it every single day. And, guys, here's the thing. And I've been thinking about this a lot. Now that I'm home alone and I'm not caring for my elderly parents anymore, which I did for 20 years, I have to have my own routine. And it's shocking how difficult it is to come up with a routine. And my daily routine, which I am responsible for, has to put my health first and put my physical health and my emotional health first. And having a very specific routine where I take responsibility for that. And so that means that every day I'm supposed to walk and exercise. The more I exercise, the happier I am, whether I'm stretching on my living room floor, whether I'm doing this or that, whether I'm out walking, getting outside. I know for me to be truly happy and healthy, I have to exercise. Number two, I have to do things that bring me joy. And I'm telling you right now, we're all programmed to keep looking at that damn phone. And the phone will never bring you joy. It's just noise. It's stress, attacking. And it's not healthy, especially if you have a history of anxiety and if you're struggling there. And so I'm really like, I have a great movie for you to watch. It's called Sing. I watched it 2 nights ago. It's fabulous. Happy, joyful, way better than sitting on my phone listening to people criticizing whoever politician they don't like. But that's not going to get me anywhere emotionally. And I think we have to take very consistent steps that puts our health first. So doing a nice writing in a journal, deep breathing, whatever, making good food. Nobody's going to do that for us. We have to do it. We have to take responsibility for that. Diane says, is it okay to take Cystomen for the long term? I don't see why not. I mean, the supplements have been out. Sister Protect has been out for 20 years. I think the fundamental question here is you and our AUA guidelines say that we don't want you to take therapies for the rest of your life. We want to know if it's working. So if you've been taking something for the long term and you're investing money in that, at some point in time, you need to evaluate how well it's helping. And so that's where we want to do avoiding diarrhea. Let's see what your symptoms are. Hopefully you've been doing avoiding diarrhea like once a quarter for a couple of days, working just to see in general where your body is. And then you can also try reducing the dose. So if you were doing 4 a day, go to 3 a day for a week. See how you're doing. Maybe you don't need as many. Go to 2 a day. See how you're doing. Somebody once asked Dr. Lowell Parsons, will I have to take Elmeron for the rest of my life? He said, no. Just have to figure out if it's helping you or not. How do you do that? You reduce the dose gradually. And if you reduce the dose from 4 to 3 and nothing changes, you go to 2, nothing changes, you go to 1, nothing changes, you stop it, nothing changes, not helping. But if you go from 4 to 3 and your symptoms come back a little bit, maybe it's helping a little bit. Of course, that's separate. This was way before we learned about the eye issue with Elmeron and the inflammatory bowel disease issue with Elmeron. But I think you can apply that to any of the supplements, the chondroitin-based supplements. And remember too what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, it's all based upon your phenotype. So the patients who have estrogen atrophy, they're going to do the best with a chondroitin-based supplement like Bladder Builder, Cystomen. The patients with Hunner's lesions now, we're pointing directly to lactoferrin because now we have research that shows that lactoferrin could reduce Hunner's lesion. For patients with recurring UTI, we're going to lactoferrin or Prevent. For patients who are central sensitization, you're going for that blue turquoise bottle in the back right there. That's Peora. And if you have acid sensitivity, if you're struggling to eat because foods bother you, because you have Hunner's lesions, then we're going to Preleaf. And we want to thank Preleaf for sponsoring this support group meeting. And so Preleaf is the most widely used supplement in the IC world. It's been out for well over 30 years. It acts to reduce the acid levels in urine so that As the holidays come up, if you need to go to grandma's house and you don't want to offend her because she's serving lasagna and you're terrified of the lasagna, 2 caplets of pre-leaf can reduce 95% of the acid in the tomato sauce for that lasagna. If you need to drink coffee for one reason or another, and let's say you're a long distance driver and you know coffee normally irritates the hell out of your bladder, you could try pre-leaf to reduce the acid level in that coffee. Of course, caffeine, it doesn't reduce caffeine. If you're doing the coffee thing, ideally you're going to go with a low acid coffee like Tyler's or Bella Rosa low acid coffee, or even better yet, go with um, Dandy Blend, which is our herbal instant coffee, which does everything you need it to do, including help you have a bowel movement in the morning, but it's no acid, it's not going to irritate your bladder, and no caffeine. Dandy Blend is phenomenal as a coffee alternative. So we have lots and lots of options, but thank you to Pre-Leaf and DSC Healthcare Solutions and AK Pharma, who have literally sponsored the IC movement for the last 30 years and counting. The IC network would not be here today were it not for the financial support of Pre-Leaf in the early days. Let me tell you, my gratitude is endless. Lori said, I started a bad flare in January and had a bladder stretch. It did help for about a month. Now I've been in a bladder flare since June, taking 6 bladder instills, and my bladder, when doctor checked, is raw and red. I'm so depressed. Sometimes I used to get past this, and I can't. My bladder is sore and pressure. What do you think, Jill? Nighttime is horrible. I'm so tired. So, okay. So this is what we know, Lori. We know your bladder wall is very red and inflamed. Now we have to figure out why. Could it be red and inflamed because you're in estrogen atrophy? Remember, the bladder defends itself with a really thick coating of mucus. It acts as a barrier. We call it the gag layer. So your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ that's wet on the inside, and that wetness is important. It protects everything. Unfortunately, that mucus is estrogen dependent. So when you're young and have a lot of estrogen, you have a lot of mucus. But if you're on birth control, if you're on Lupron for endo, if you're perimenopausal or postmenopausal, you are estrogen compromised. I am estrogen compromised. I am 64 years old. Of course I am in estrogen atrophy. So how do we give the bladder what it needs to produce mucus again? Estrogen, topical estrogen. This is called the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, IC phenotype 2, bladder wall-driven estrogen atrophy. And so if your vulva is dry and your vagina is dry, so is your urethra and so is your bladder. So first thing we want to do is we want to help the bladder skin cells be healthy again by giving them topical estrogen. The second thing we always want to look for, and I know that this sounds like a broken record, but it is real because I work with you guys every single day, except on Sunday. Well, except I'm working with you now. Okay, but every day I'm working with patients, pretty much. Inflammation can be caused by a chemical irritant. And you would be amazed at the number of people who say they're following the IC diet and they're not. They're still having that 1 cup of coffee a day. I was working with somebody like 2 weeks ago who was drinking gallons of green tea, and they were in agony. And green tea of all the hot drinks is by far the worst. It is so acidic. It is so caffeinated. So, Lori, I would want to go through your diet and let's just make sure you're not accidentally irritating your bladder further. Lactoferrin, again, in the research study that was presented in August, was found to eliminate bladder redness. And so lactoferrin would be an easy thing for you to try for a couple of months to see if that would be helpful. And then we also have to look at the other things that trigger inflammation. A neuroinflammatory process Is there something else going on in your pelvis that's got your nerves all worked up? And so if you want to call, I'd be happy to talk with you this week. More than happy to talk with you and see if we can go through some of the known irritants that could be causing that. Sharon says, where was that study done? That study was done in Italy by a very similar team that did the original PEA research. Lori says, Vedic and those medicines are not for me. They make me tired and depressed. Lactoferrin is not a medicine. It is a protein. Did I like hydroxyzine? I loved hydroxyzine. But it didn't, it chilled me out so that I wasn't crying all the time, but it didn't fundamentally fix anything because my problem was not my bladder wall. My problem was my pelvic floor. It was the pelvic floor physical therapy that was a massive improvement in my symptoms, combined with the getting the anxiety under control to calm my central nervous system down. How do you spell that? You guys, it's right on the IC Network website. Just go to icnetwork.org, go into our treatment area, and it's all spelled out for you there. Elaine wants me to go through that central nervous system. Good, we will do that. Sharon says she just had 2 brain MRIs. Interesting. Bonnie said Preleaf doesn't work for you. How so, Bonnie? You know, you got to understand that Preleaf does not reduce IC symptoms. Preleaf is not a bladder treatment. We got to have a reality check on what we want Preleaf to do. All Preleaf does is reduces the pH of your urine to make your urine less irritating. You can't take Preleaf and expect it to make your frequency go away. It doesn't work that way. We have to figure out, Bonnie, why you have your symptoms. We have to figure out what phenotype you're in first. That will then help us understand the biology that's going on that's driving some of your symptoms. So we can try to phenotype you if you want. Cardstay on YouTube says she eats a plant-based whole food diet to minimize all estrogen atrophy-driven inflammation. I'm doing the same, hun. I'm much more plant-focused. I'm eating a bunch of veggies every day. Last night I had falafel for dinner with beet delight and a really good little mini salad, hummus and things like that. You know, one of the things that I find very interesting as a cancer survivor now that I'm learning a lot more about it, is that sugar drives cancer growth. And, you know, when I asked the doctor why I had breast cancer, since there's no breast cancer in my family on either side, she said only 15% of breast cancer is genetic. For the rest of us, it's environmental exposures combined with periods of very, very intense stress. And I was watching a lecture earlier last week that described cancer as a mitochondrial metabolic disorder. Is that right? That basically, is that right? I didn't say it exactly right. But that basically the cancer cells are feeding on sugar. If there's a fermentation happening, it's a mitochondrial metabolic disorder that the mitochondria, the energy producers in each cell, become damaged through inflammation, and because of that, they can't behave the way they can't feed the way they normally feed. So what happens is they're getting their energy from sugar. But by doing that, that produces the process which causes the cancer to grow. So anyway, I literally watched this lecture and threw away my Halloween candy immediately. I don't eat a lot of candy anyway, but and fundamentally they blamed it on the fact that we're all grazing on sugars all day. There's way too much sugar in our body. And I agree with that. From sodas to fruit juices to Gatorades to a lot of carbs. Yeah, we are flooding our bodies with sugar, and that's one reason why we have such obesity. So I am reconsidering a lot. And yet, yesterday, I will say, I did have some sourdough bread. It's a work in progress. Lori's 61. She says, did I have burning when I urinated? Yes. Burning on the outside where your urine feels very hot. That's estrogen atrophy of the vulva. Burning in the urethra, that can be estrogen atrophy in the urethra. So Lori said that when she tried estrogen cream, it burned really badly. That's normal. That means your skin is very, very dry. That's very dry. But the more you give that skin estrogen, the more it produces mucus, and the burning goes away. Okay, now Lori, girl, what did we just say? You said you're following. You said you have a cup of coffee in the morning. Okay, you can't do that. At the age of 61, you cannot do that right now. You are in severe pain. Listen, if you had a wound on your hand, would you pour coffee on it? What would happen to a wound on your hand if you poured coffee on it every day? It would hurt like hell and it would get bigger. You cannot have that one cup of coffee a day right now, because one cup of coffee a day will prevent your bladder from healing. I mean, think about the mechanics here. If you had a wound in your hand and you poured coffee inside that wound, will that wound heal? Given that you're irritating it with acid every day and you're poking the nerves with caffeine? No, the wound will never heal if you're drinking one cup of coffee a day. And that came from a lecture at the National Institutes of Health taught by Dr. Anthony Schaefer years ago. The bladder is the slowest healing organ in the body. It takes 2 weeks for one cell to be replaced. And that new cell, that stem cell, which is trying to grow and heal the spot that's damaged, as it's growing, it is exquisitely vulnerable to acid. One cup of coffee will destroy it. So every cup of coffee you drink sets you back 2 weeks worth of healing. Not lying. You cannot have that cup of coffee in the morning. You have to lose it for at least 6 months to give your bladder time to heal. You are preventing healing. So what I would encourage you to do is switch to Dandy Blend. That's the herbal coffee. But there's no acid in it and there's no caffeine in it, and it tastes great. It will give you everything you need in that morning cup of coffee, but it's not going to burn the hell out of your bladder like that cup of coffee is. Girl, I have this conversation every week. And you also have to understand that no treatment can counteract the damage being done by that coffee every day. As long as you're drinking that coffee, you're not allowing the medications to help you. There's no treatment like Vesicare or Elmeron or an antihistamine, anything. None of those can counteract the damage of that coffee. Your bladder is on fire right now because you're pouring acid on it every day. Lose the coffee for a month. You could be a completely new woman. Give it a shot. You got nothing to lose. Denise says, and somebody's going to say, well, can I do coffee and pre-leaf? No, not right now, because your bladder is screaming at you. It's wounded. If you poured coffee with pre-leaf on a wound on your hand, would the wound heal? And the answer is no. What would you put on a wound? Water. That's what you would put on a wound. You can do water, you can do chamomile herbal tea, you can do peppermint herbal tea, you can do hot water with honey, you can do milk, and you can do Dandy Blend. But no coffee for 6 months. You got to give your bladder time to heal. Denise says, pre-leaf is great when you go out to dinner and not sure what might be in a meal. I take it as a precaution. My worst IC flare caused horrible vulvar burning and pain. It actually throbbed. Bonnie says, I was told I don't have IC, just an overactive bladder. He offered Botox injections. So Bonnie, overactive bladder implies that it's a neurological problem. So our question then becomes, well, why are the nerves exposed? Why have the nerves become sensitive? Well, that's when we go back to the condition and health of the bladder wall, specifically estrogen atrophy. By your picture, it looks like you might be my age. And if you're my age, if you're over the age of 40, you are in estrogen atrophy, which means your bladder is not producing the mucus that normally protects the nerves that are driving your overactive bladder. So if we can get the skin healthy and protected so that those nerves aren't exposed, maybe you wouldn't need the expensive Botox treatments. This is called the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. It's on our website, the very distinct phenotype of IC, bladder wall driven estrogen atrophy. Sharon says, did I say 15 or 50% heredity for breast cancer? 15, 1, 5. Lori says, I know, I even have Dandy Blend. I need you. Lori, go grab your coffee right now and throw it in the damn trash can. You're done. You have Dandy Blend. It's fine. Use it. And you're welcome to call me, honey. Listen, I'm always good for a pep talk. If you need a pep talk, I can give you a pep talk. And that goes to anybody out there. And if you're just struggling and you just need a shoulder, that's why I'm here. I love my job. And you know what? Our phone is free. If you want to call and just chat, if I have time, I will chat with you. If you want to spend a long time chatting, I'm going to probably ask you to sign up for a coaching session. But if you want to talk for 5 or 10 minutes, it's usually fine. Okay? It's not a problem. Sharon says, I can't stay on the diet either, but I don't drink coffee. Well, then Sharon, what are you doing? What are you drinking if you're not drinking coffee? Are you drinking green tea, black tea, soda, sweet tea? Are you drinking Gatorade? Are you drinking? And you guys, listen, I have a friend. I don't know if she's listening right now, but she was in here earlier. So she stopped drinking soda and started drinking Gatorade. No. Gatorade is just like soda. It's just a massive amount of sugar. Gatorade is for when you're being an athlete. You know, I mean, I drank Gatorade when I was playing professional tennis on 100 degree. I mean, I love to play tournaments when it was 100 degrees or over. And I won tournaments when it was super, super hot. I can't do that now. My body is now thoroughly redhead. But believe me, I drank a lot of Gatorade when I was playing professional tennis. And if I feel like I'm getting dehydrated, then yes, I'll do Gatorade. I have Gatorade in my garage, but I don't do it every day because it's soda. And I do not want to gain weight. I want to lose weight. Valerie says, is Powerade Zero okay? No, it's not. It's not because of the artificial sugars. Let's see what the artificial sugar is. Because listen, we got big problems with artificial sugars right now. If we know that artificial sugar, so the World Health Organization, either last June or a year ago last June, now recommended the consumption of no artificial sweetener, none, because they're so strongly associated with obesity. And the problem, the biology of an artificial sweetener explains why people get obese on them. Because what happens is when you put something really, really sweet in your mouth, and remember, artificial sugar is like 100 times or 1,000 times sweeter than regular sugar. When you put that sweet thing in your mouth and it hits your tongue, that triggers a bunch of stuff going on in your body. And one of the things that happens is your brain goes, ooh, sugar, energy. And your brain prepares to receive the energy. But the energy never arrives because it's artificial. And so an hour later, your brain goes, hey, where's my energy? I was ready for it. It's not there. So it makes you graze. All of a sudden, you start snacking. And you start snacking all day when you're doing artificial sugar because you're faking your brain out and your brain's saying, oh, hell no, you can't fake me out. I'm going to get my energy one way or another. If you're not going to give it to me that way, I'm going to get it in this way and I'm going to make you graze. And there are ginormous research studies with tens of thousands of patients who have proven artificial sweeteners are linked to obesity. Okay, but now we have even worse news because we now know that some artificial sugars, especially sugar alcohols, are linked with blood clots and strokes. And so if you're drinking something with sugar alcohol in it, with erythritol in it, or xylitol in it, the xylitol research came out last spring, get the hell off of it. The last thing you need is a stroke, especially in the era of COVID, because if you've had COVID attacks blood vessels and causes more microclots. The last thing you need is to add something else in there, which is going to make more clots grow. Yikes. Yikes. So Valerie, you can tell when I get on my rants here. Because I'm all about kind of consumer safety, and I love I don't trust big business at all. I as a chemist and as a pharmacologist, I don't trust any of these companies. They basically put profit ahead of our health, in my opinion. It's kind of like the old, tobacco industry. They had videos saying smoking was safe. My mom smoked for 30 years. When she died, her lungs were filled with tumors. It's a miracle she didn't die younger than she did. All right, so let's look at Powerade Zero. Let's see what's in it. So what are the nutritional facts? Sucralose. Got sucralose in it. So it's got citric acid, it's got classic electrolytes, natural flavors, modified food starch, that's an issue. Sucralose, that's an issue. Vitamins B12 and vitamin C, the vitamin C is an issue because it's in the form of ascorbic acid. It's got sucrose acetate, isobutyrate, yikes. It's got another sugar in it, asulfame, potassium, and it's got red dye 40. And that's for the strawberry smash Powerade Zero. So the hard answer is not bladder friendly. Not bladder friendly. Debbie asks, hint water. Hint water is fine. And an infused water. So like if you get LaCroix sparkling water, those are fine. I mean, you want to ideally don't open it up, let it gas off for about an hour. I mean, because the sparkles or the sparkling water is caused by carbonic acid. And some people might be a little bit sensitive to that. So I'm not sensitive to it. I drink LaCroix all the time. But I do like it better if I've left it out overnight and it doesn't have quite as many sparkles in it. Is stevia safe? No. None of the artificial sweeteners are safe at this point in time. And that comes from the World Health Organization. Their only exception was sugar alcohols. And we have new research from the Cleveland Clinic, which has proven that sugar alcohols are linked to blood clot formation and stroke. And so the answer is a hard no. I think the only sugar that's safe is honey. So when I made my breakfast smoothie this morning, I put honey in it. I don't know. I feel very compelled to, now that I'm a cancer survivor, to simplify everything. I want to get rid of all the manufactured foods. I'm like the one ingredient girl now. I want it simple. I want it organic. I want it fresh. And I don't need barbecue sauce, and I don't need this or that. Give me stir-fried vegetables, tofu, maybe, or chicken, and I'm good. I'm good. Renee says, "What about monk fruit? No sugar, without sugar alcohol." I don't have any experience with monk fruit, and I don't have any IC diet studies that have looked at monk fruit. So I think it's going to be one of those things where you have to try it and see how you do it. We haven't had an IC diet study in probably 10 years. And by the way, I should tell you that I deactivated my IC diet apps. I deactivated both of our apps. So our bladder tracker app and our IC diet app are no longer in the stores for phones. Not that they won't be again, but they're just not financially viable. They're just not. The only way they would be financially viable is if I charge $5 an app. And it costs $20,000 minimum to create an app today for all the operating systems. And I'm just not, I just can't afford that. We cannot afford that. So the apps at this point in time are done. Girl, I am simplifying. I am really simplifying my life right now. Sharon said, I've been telling people for decades or more artificial sugar is bad and could cause GI problems. They say it's made from sugar. I would have guessed it's safe. Yeah, no, we knew a good 20 years ago that we were starting to get these big research studies linking artificial sugar with obesity. And of course, the other big thing with NutraSweet, and of course, God, there's so much misinformation online, and people who love it and people who hate it and people who say this and people who say that. This is what I can tell you. And working with patients for 30 years, diet soda flares many patients. It does. Diet soda is far more painful than a sugar-based soda. And sugar-based sodas flare because of the acid, but diet sodas are like that on steroids. They're just way, way, way too irritating. So Valerie says, message received, Jills. I'm throwing it all away. Yes. You know, the other thing for me is I am, look, you can see my arm this is where I had my breast cancer and my lymph nodes removed. So I was noticing today, it's a little bit loosey-goosey in here. Oh, well. Okay, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. It just went in and out of my brain. The other thing that I'm really struggling with, and you guys can help me here, you know, so back when I started the IC network, I started it to provide support for people at home. It was in 1994. Because I had people in my support group who were too ill to come to meetings. I would put all this prep into my support groups, and they cost a lot of money because I had to photocopy articles and stuff. And the people who really needed it weren't there. And I would call them and I would say, why are you here? We had such good info. And their answer was it hurt too much. They couldn't get in a car. And I could really relate to that because I was crying in the car driving to Petaluma to go lead the damn meeting. You know, driving a car is really painful if you have pelvic pain, whether it's bladder or pelvic floor. I can't tell you the number of times I would drive down there crying, and then I fix all my makeup in the car and walk in. Car rides suck. And it just kind of dawned on me that we needed to bring support to patients who are homebound. I was really interested in that. So the first thing I did is I started a newsletter, a bigger newsletter. And then I went to the ICA because I was a group leader for the ICA. And I said, would you let me do a bigger newsletter to help these patients who are homebound? And their answer was no. If they can't come to meetings, cut them off. Just take them off your list. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a direct quote. They said to just remove them from your list? And my answer was, they paid you for a year. They're entitled to information for a year. I want to do that. So they were not interested in this challenge of bringing support to patients who are homebound. So that's when the internet started. And that's when we had America Online and CompuServe. And so I went on America Online and I started the first ever urology support groups. And I worked cancer patients, UTI patients, IC patients, prostate patients, paraplegics, quadriplegics. Did that for a year. I found a dissertation at Stanford and it worked. People got online in the middle of the night when they were flaring to help each other. It's spectacularly successful. And I went back to the ICA and said, I will build you the first website on IC and the first online support center. And again, I got a lecture on knowing my place and that it was a stupid idea. And that's when the IC network was built. And it's like, that's it. And so we had our website and we had our forums for decades, 20 years. I mean, we had hundreds of thousands of patients visiting all the time. I had a team of 20 support group leaders running it, all volunteer. Let me tell you, we kicked ass. We were great. And then social networking happened. And all of a sudden, patients moved around. And that was fun. I was a little offended at first. It's like, come on, I'm doing all this work. But then I kind of realized, you know what, I can't help everybody. We can't help everybody here. So people can go. I mean, just go where you can find your group. Any place you can get support, that's good for me. That's good for you. Well, the problem now is that the IC community is completely scattered to the wind. Completely scattered. And the other problem now is that people don't even want to read anymore. They don't even want to come to read websites anymore. They want videos. And that's why I have the IC 101 Masterclass video series on YouTube, and it's free. And I've got another episode I'll be uploading tomorrow. I mean, that's where people go now. They just want videos and they want short videos. So, you know, the job of CEO of any company is to forecast 5 years out. Where do you need to be in 5 years? I don't know right now because we are scattered to the wind. And there's a part of me that says, just get rid of the website. They cost a lot of money. But I'm not going to get rid of that main IC network website. I'll probably get rid of a lot of our other little websites. And I think we just have to live on YouTube now, and live on Facebook now. But even then, getting the word out is next to impossible. It's a real problem, and it's something I'm really struggling with right now. So, anybody has any ideas on, like, what's the future? Where should the next online support be? I mean, we can do like we did years ago, we can do a phone service where people can just call in and talk to each other. The problem with that is the liability. There's massive liability. You have to have somebody trained in that conversation. There was a very famous case on Facebook and it was not in an IC group, it was in another group. Somebody was in another health group and they went into the group and they said they were suicidal and they described it, like the plan. And the people in the group legitimately went in and tried to help them, but it didn't work. And that patient committed suicide online on Facebook. And the family came in and found them a day later or whatever, and they found all the messages. They found everything. And they sued Facebook. And what they claimed in the lawsuit was that patients developed an inappropriate like counseling relationship with a suicidal client for which they were not qualified. Yes, Renee, it is. As long as we have members, yeah, this podcast is fine. And so that was the moment that all health chat rooms shut down because Facebook lost that case. And I had a live chat room for years where you could come in at night. We had a nice group of patients who came in and talked to each other at night. It was wonderful. But I had a paid staffer monitoring that and who knew what to do if we had somebody who was suicidal. And then we shut it down. It was open for like 4 hours a night. And then we shut it down because we just couldn't let, from a liability standpoint, people log in and out all hours of the day, because there are people out there who are harmful. I mean, I have kicked people off of the IC. I had kicked off one person off of the IC network because she told everybody to kill themselves, which is ridiculous. I kicked somebody else off because she was incredibly abusive to other patients. And, so I just don't know where the future is. I am very, very reluctant to set up a voice channel. I can't take on that liability of that. I can take on the liability of this meeting right now because I know what I'm saying and I'm very guarded with what I'm saying. So, and again, Renee said, well, is this live support group meeting okay? It's absolutely okay. I love this. This is my job. I love doing this. It's okay as long as we have members who help us to pay the bills. So if you like what I'm doing here, come on over and sign up to be a member. It's $25, for goodness sake, and you get our great magazine 3 or 4 times a year and a lot of other freebies. There are a lot of other freebies that go to our members. Or you can make a donation. That's great. Or you can just buy stuff in the IC Network shop, like my book, IC 101. It's not just a bladder disease, or any of the supplements like Peora. So anyway, the future is weird. Renee says, I encourage everyone to join. The magazine is really good. Thank you, Renee. I think the magazine I love it. I mean, I just really think I do the best work in our magazine. By far. So, Renee, the way you join is you go over to the Dreama, the way you join is go over to the IC Network website. And now that I have my mic here, I realize you can't see that. Let me do this. Stay. Just head on over to icnetwork.org, and right at the top of the page is a link, become a member. Also, Dreama, just so you know, the hurricane wiped out our server for our store, and that's where all of our member pages live for the couple thousand patients who are members right now. We're doing a massive update because the server got destroyed and by the flooding. So you might want to wait until tomorrow or Tuesday, because they're going to shut down the store tonight and try to rebuild a big portion of it. Okay, so just wait 24 to 48 hours, then come on over. Renee says, I joined and I've ordered supplements and a pillow, the divided pillow. Great, thank you. All right, guys, I'm here as long as you have questions. Here, hold on a sec. Diane said, can lactoferrin help bladder wall inflammation from other bladder wall? Yes, that's what the study showed. You know what? Let me pull up the study, and then I want to show you the technique that we use to get the brain out of fight or flight for those of us who have IC, IBS, and vulvodynia. But hold on a sec. Let me just go ahead and grab this lactoferrin study here real quick. So lactoferrin, let's see here. And I actually have it printed out. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So I actually bought the whole paper. Okay, so here it is. Lactoferrin in the treatment of IC, a retrospective pilot study. So this is kind of an introductory study, but still it's very, very meaningful. A total of 31 women affected with IC, and then there's something else you're talking about in there too, presented with a median of 6 episodes of IC or 6 flares during the 6 months before the study. Treatment consisted of 17 weeks of orally administered Valpap, which is lactoferrin it's a lactoferrin brand in Europe. Out of 31 patients, only 3 women had 1 episode of IC during the follow-up period, while no flares were observed in 28 women. Let's see. There was a significant decrease in both interleukin-6s and D dimers. Moreover, in the Valpap-treated women, cystoscopy revealed a global improvement in the appearance of the bladder, especially in terms of inflammation, irritation, and the presence of Hunner's ulcers. So the product they use, Valpap, is not available in the United States. So I went to Australia and found another supplier of lactoferrin that I've brought into our store. Again, I'm choosing not to go with American producers of lactoferrin because bird flu being found in American milk products. Okay, so somebody asked about doing this technique to calm the central nervous system. So let's put this in context again. We have 5 phenotypes: Hunner's lesions, bladder wall-driven chemical injury, bladder wall-driven estrogen atrophy, pelvic floor-driven pudendal neuralgia, and central sensitization. So phenotype 5 is 40% of the IC patient population. So these are patients who have multiple pain conditions, IC and or IBS and or vulvodynia and or TMJ and or migraines and or fibromyalgia, etc. One of the signs that we're dealing with is a very sensitive central nervous system is very sensitive skin or a wicked sense of smell. That's how I know we're dealing with somebody with central sensitization at their nose. Can you smell everything, and do normal smells bother you? If you can smell everything, then that tells us we're dealing with a very sensitive central nervous system. And of course, the fundamental problem with a sensitive central nervous system is it amplifies pain. It makes pain more intense. And so the way we reduce systemic pain is by reducing the sensitivity in the central nervous system. And the way we do that is by proving to your brain that there's no threat. Patients who have widespread pain, 80% of them have a history of a major physical trauma. 20% of them have a history of abuse, emotional abuse, growing up in the home with an alcoholic, whatever. And I'm so sorry if that happened to you. The stories I'm getting from IC patients with widespread pain are heartbreaking. Not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. The challenge is in an environment of trauma, your brain remembers that trauma, and that trauma causes persistent fight or flight. And that's what drives all this central sensitization is persistent fight or flight. If you have anxiety disorder like I do, you have been in persistent fight or flight. I had terrible fight or flight in my 20s. Okay. So how do we do this? How do we reverse this? The language of fight or flight is sensory information. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off fight or flight by proving to your brain that you are safe at this very moment. And it works every single time. It has never not worked. These are techniques developed at Harvard Medical School for PTSD patients, guys coming back from war with severe PTSD. Now, I've put my own little swing on it and I've shortened it a little bit, but I'm going to walk you through this very simple technique that works really, really well. Okay? So let's start this by just taking 2 deep breaths. Okay? Let's just go in for 3 and out for 3. Let's do it again. In for 3 and out for 3. Oxygen is important because it turns off adrenaline. We need those deep breaths. Okay. We're going to focus first on the sense of sight. I want you to pick something in your room or out the window that you like. So I have a painting right here from a neighbor. It's this gorgeous, beautiful painting of a field, an oak-covered hill. Okay? I want you to pick something you like to look at. Could be a pet, could be a cat, could be a dog, could be flowers, could be a tree outside, clouds. Pick something that you like to look at. And let's look at it for a couple of seconds, okay? I'm going to look at my painting. Makes me happy. Okay? Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Now we're going to do the sense of sound. Besides my voice, what can you hear? And it's okay if you can't hear anything. Just take a moment, close your eyes, and listen. I hear a fan on. I have a little fan on the floor right here. Okay, is there a TV on? Can you hear the wind? Can you hear a furnace? Can you hear the ocean? Stop for a couple of seconds and just listen. Okay, deep breath in. Deep breath out. Now we're going to go with the sense of smell. Are there any odors in the room? Just sniff. I can smell hair conditioner as I wash my hair this morning. Just, can you smell? And it's okay if you can't smell anything. Okay? Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay? Are there any flavors in your mouth? Now we're going to do a sense of taste. And it's okay if they're not. But are there any flavors in your mouth? Just take a moment. Like I have, I can taste a little bit of the smoothie that I had. I had a mango banana smoothie. So I have a little hint of that in my mouth. And again, it's okay if there's not. So just, got anything there? Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Now I want you to take your hand, because we're going to do the sense of touch, and I want you to rub it up and down your thigh 10 times. Okay, you guys, don't talk about anything else. Don't talk about anything else. We come back to that, Erin. Just do the exercise. Take your hand 10 times your thigh. All we're doing is we're lighting up your brain with touch receptors. We're making your brain work. It's paying attention to what you're touching. And there's no threat here. You're perfectly safe. You're just making your brain work. Okay? Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay, now comes the fun part. If you could, and you may not say I see at all. I don't want to hear anything about I see. This is not about I see. This is just hypothetical. If you could look at anything that would put an immediate smile on your face, what would that be? Would it be a dog or a cat? Would it be a grandchild or a child running to you? Would it be your lover? Would it be a waterfall? Would it be the ocean? What would you just love to look at that would make you happy? For me, I'm going with a beach in Hawaii, the Kahala Beach in Hawaii, which is a little local beach that tourists don't know about in Honolulu. And you can just sit there on the warm sand, close your eyes as the waves are coming in. Birds are flying over, the pelicans are flying over, you hear a child laughing. It's just like I want to go sit there for a month right now. So close your eyes and visualize your happy place. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, what could you hear that would put an immediate smile on your face? Would it be the waves of the ocean? Would it be your favorite music? My favorite music, every single time, Kenny Loggins' Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh doesn't know what to do. Got a honey jar stuck on his nose. I love that song. Just makes me happy. So what would you just love to listen to that would make you happy? Would it be the laughter of a child? Close your eyes and visualize your favorite sound. I'm going with ocean waves right now. I feel like I need the grounding of ocean waves. Okay, deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay, what could you smell that would put an immediate smile on your face? Would it be baking chocolate chip cookies? Would it be coconut, roses, baking cinnamon rolls? What would it be your lover? The smell of a newborn baby? Pick your favorite. It's so interesting the number of people, they don't have a favorite smell. Think about it just for a moment and visualize it. I love the smell of coconut and the smell of Sea and Ski suntan lotion from when I was a kid. It just makes me really happy when I think about that. So close your eyes and visualize or imagine that smell. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Now comes the fun part, the really fun part. And again, IC doesn't matter. If you could eat or drink anything that would put an immediate smile on your face, I don't care if it's IC friendly or not. We're just going for what would you just love to take a bite of or a drink of? Would it be a chocolate cake, a hot cinnamon roll, a prime rib, the sky is the limit here. What would you just love to take a bite of? So I'm going to go with my personal all-time favorite, which is a hot, gooey cinnamon roll. So imagine that it is on a plate in front of you. It's all gooey. If you want to follow mine, you pick your own. So the frosting is melted. It's steaming. You take your fork, you take your first bite, you smell it. Oh my God, it smells so good. And you put it in your mouth, and like all is right with the world. It's like, oh, I really needed this right now. It's so good. And live there just for a couple of seconds. Have a second bite. It's okay. Have a second bite. Okay. Deep breath in and a deep breath out. And last but not least, what could you touch that would put an immediate smile on your face? Would it be a cat in your lap? A dog? Warm, I love the warm sand because I lived on a beach for a couple of years when I was in college. And believe me, it wasn't as good as it sounds. But what was really cool was you could sit on the beach and have your hands in your sand. And even though the wind was cool, the sand was always warm. And it was earthy warm. It was so good. So what could you touch that would put an immediate smile on your face? A lot of people pick their pets, and that's fine. Perfect. Close your eyes and imagine that you have a cat in your lap and you're petting. Or you have a horse and you're brushing him. Or you're at the beach. Or you're taking a warm bath. Just imagine that sense of touch. Okay? Deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Okay. How do you feel? You got a smile on your face right now? I bet you do. I do. This technique brings your brain out of fight or flight because it uses sensory information to prove to your brainstem you're completely safe. And it will stay off for hours. Sharon says she's calmer. It will stay off for hours. And you know what? If you've got a child who is struggling, a child who's afraid to go to school, or a child who's just having an issue and you need to calm them down, go sit on the back porch and say, honey, if you could eat anything right now, what would you want to eat? Go through the senses with them. What would you just love to look at that would make you happy right now? Puppies? What would you love to smell? What would you love to taste? What would you love to hear? It's a great way of grounding a child, and great way. So try to do this when you're feeling anxious. Try to do this when you're having a bad day. Let me tell you, I've probably done this so many times. I've done it many times anyway, but in the last 4 months, a couple of times a day, and I'm usually doing it with another patient, but it's so helpful. Now, here's the other big piece of this puzzle. So your fight or flight will stay off, but for those of us with anxiety disorder, what turns fight or flight back on, all it takes is one negative thought. Oh, that's stupid. It'll never work, Jill. What a load of crap you said. Okay, that's a negative thought. That's a negative thought. So our challenge here, the second piece of this puzzle, is that we have got to nip these negative thoughts in the bud here. Because, the odds are if you have anxiety disorder, you say no to every invitation. Hey, Jill, you want to? No. You want? No. You want to go? No, I don't. And I've asked a lot of doctors, why does my brain do that? My brain actually did it a week ago when a friend asked me if I wanted to go see a play, and I went, "No." Like, I wanted to do it. I said, "No." "Why?" Like, legitimately, I wanted to do it. Well, that's actually your brain trying to keep you safe. That is a normal thing that happens for patients who have been traumatized. And as I was saying to my therapist, I was saying, and actually I said it to Dr. Eckenberg when I talked to him last week. Whenever I go on vacation, I never enjoy it because I'm always thinking about coming home. And that's been the way my whole life, of course, because it all began when I was attacked when I was very young. And that's the guarding reflex, and that's the brain saying you're safest at home. Why don't you stay home? Well, the brain starts to get a little devious in a way because as we grow up, it's like we want to do things more. And so the brain starts to catastrophize. It makes it a lot bigger than it really is. Hey, Jill, you want to go to a movie? No, I'll ruin the whole movie for everybody because I'll have to get up and go to the bathroom all the time. Or you want to go out and eat? No, I have a terrible flare that'll last for days. You want to go? No, something bad will happen, right? That's a brain that's working really hard to keep you safe. That's part of a protection mechanism after trauma. The challenge is it goes into overdrive. As time passes on, it's just more and more negative thoughts. And before you know it, every other thought is a negative thought, which is how I was in my 20s. It's like you get so used to it that you think you're ignoring it, but the problem is it's always keeping your nervous system in fight or flight. So the second piece of this puzzle is we gotta nip that in the bud. And that's what I learned when I was 35, when I took a fantastic anxiety management class. It was developed by a physician, a surgeon with anxiety disorder. And, so when we got to the class, and of course, I had a panic attack before I even went to the class because I always had panic attacks going to the doctor and it was at the hospital. But I got there. I always got myself there. It's just miserable. Anyway, the first revelation happened in the first 5 minutes when we introduced ourselves because we were all normal people who had been traumatized. I think up to that point, I just thought that I was like this poster child for dysfunction and that it was all my fault. But after I met other people with anxiety disorder, it's like, oh, that happened to you, and that happened to you. Oh, and that happened to me. And it took all the shame away. It's like, oh, wait, we're just normal people who went through something really hard, really traumatic. And as I've shared before, the people who won the first lottery in my area were in my class because they developed anxiety disorder after winning the lottery because they were scared. Okay. So I quickly saw that none of this was my fault. None of it. I'd been traumatized. As so many of us have been. Then the instructor goes, so like, how many of you say no to everything? And we all look at each other and go, I do. They're like, you do? Yeah, me too. And then the instructor goes, and how many of you are really chemically sensitive? They're like, yeah, me too. And he goes, yeah, that's part of this incredible sensitivity to chemicals. And he said, you know how you're sensitive to chemicals on the outside? Well, you're also very sensitive to chemicals on the inside. And he said, right now, you are overdosing on adrenaline. You have so much adrenaline shooting through your body right now that's what's driving the panic. That's what's driving the negative thoughts. That's what's driving your increase in heart rate. That's what's driving the flushing. Because every time you have a negative thought, you scare yourself and you give yourself a jolt of adrenaline. And again, it's not like you have, just one negative thought a day, you're good. You have 100 negative thoughts a day, that's 100 shots of adrenaline circulating through your body, creating chaos. So he said the secret to reducing anxiety is to get rid of the adrenaline. If we can just get rid of the adrenaline in your body, things will start to get better. And I'm like, okay, how do we do that? He goes, it's easy. Oxygen. Oxygen turns off adrenaline. Again, I'm like, okay, I'm all in. I'll give it a shot. How do we do it? And he said, okay, for just the first week, all we're going to do is get rid of the adrenaline. So I'm going to teach you a simple technique to do that. Whenever you have a negative thought, the very first thing you do is visualize a stop sign. Just stop. Hey, Jill, you want to know I'll have a flare? Stop. Stop. Then you take a single deep breath. In for 3. And out for 3. And that oxygen has now rendered the adrenaline from that negative thought chemically neutral. It is done. It is over. So stop sign, deep breath. And the third step is you just remind yourself it's a thought. It has no power. It's just your brain guarding you. That's all. So what I say to myself is, oh my God, Jill, you're not God. You can't predict the future. For all you know, tomorrow's going to be a fantastic day and you're going to have a great time. It's just your brain guarding you. It's powerless. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I said, okay, I need you to do this for at least a week. Just pay attention to your thoughts and do it. We're just trying to quantitatively reduce the adrenaline. And of course, I had my first negative thought walking out of the room. Oh my God, what a stupid idea. It'll never work, but I did it. And that first day, I did it at least 100 times. The second day, I did it about 50 times. The third day, I did it about 20 times. 5 days later, once. And for the first time since 4th grade, I was not scared anymore. I was not consumed by anxiety anymore because I had gotten rid of the adrenaline. And that's what I've done for the last 29 years. I haven't had a single panic attack, and I've only come close once. That's what I did when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That's what I did when they told me that I could die. That's what I do. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I can fly with one negative thought, and I usually have one negative thought a day, and it's either about a fire or an earthquake. Okay, but if I have 2 in a row, no. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I know that the enemy is multiple negative thoughts in a row. I do not need multiple shots of adrenaline going through my bloodstream because that's just going to amp up my central nervous system, and that's just going to make my widespread pain worse. We got to calm it down, my friends. So I double dog dare you to try it. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. Do it for at least a week. Sharon says, I don't want to go anywhere still. Well, and that she rarely leaves her home. I understand that, honey. Especially COVID reinforced that. There's a lot of reasons to stay home. But in the end, you have to live a fulfilling life. And it's really hard to be fulfilled if you just stay home. If you can get out, get into the sunshine, try to walk every day, even if it's just up and down your street. Do things that bring you joy. If you have a dog, walk the dog. If you like to garden, get out and garden. Little steps every day. I don't want you to go out and walk a marathon the first day. I just want you to open your front door, walk down to the end of the driveway, and just stop and just do your sensory. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? Ground yourself. You're safe. You're safe right now. You're in your home. You're safe. And what we need to do also is to prove to your brain you're safe when you're not at home. The trauma that happened when we were younger will never happen again. It's over. It's done. The challenge is our brain always remembers that trauma. So we have to keep reminding our brain that we're safe. It doesn't need to freak out. Marlia says, you're such a beautiful blessing, Jill.
So pre-leaf is great, but I read it can cause constipation and kidney stones. I had two very tiny stones 2 years ago, no longer there. So is this really the case with pre-leaf? I want spaghetti sauce so bad, but I have not made it in years. I'm half Italian. You know, pre-leaf safety profile is excellent. And really, the only people that, in my experience, that have struggled are people who eat it like candy and like they just eat it all day, every day. And that's always a mistake. You don't use it unless you need it. And so taking 2 tablets of pre-leaf before you have spaghetti sauce, it's worth a shot. Now, would I want you to have spaghetti sauce every day and pre-leaf every day? No. I mean, make it a treat once a week. Um, but and also with the kidney stones, it's about the type of kidney stones. There's calcium oxalate kidney stones, but there are other types of kidney stones. So for patients who are very, very prone to kidney stones, your doctor might not want you to do pre-leaf. That's a question for your doctor. Sharon says she'd be needing both knees replaced now. Well, girl, the blessing here is that it can be done. It can be done. Unlike my grandmother Nana, who was bone on bone back in the 1950s and 60s, and there was nothing for her. And she was, the blessing now is we have the technology and the surgery to give you pain-free knees. So it's an option worth exploring. I will say now that I'm older, you're not going to see me ice skating or skateboarding anymore. Not that I wouldn't want to, but I am very careful in protecting my joints. Valerie says, "Am I familiar with the New Vita Interstitial by Dr. Luke Kua?" No, I'm not. I am not. New Vita Interstitial. Luke Kua. So again, it's all about phenotyping. So there's nothing that everybody would do. I mean, because we can't afford it. We don't want to spend money on something that doesn't have the chance to work. So this is an herbal supplement with astragalus root, Japanese honeysuckle, poriacore, remnia root, reishi mushroom, a variety of other things, pointless to me. They call it the best herbal supplement to support healthy bladder, lung, kidneys, and autoimmune system. I just don't know what this is going to do for the bladder. And I don't know what it's going to do based upon phenotyping. It's assuming that everybody has a bladder disease. And now we know that the only patients who have a bladder disease are patients with Hunner's lesions. And we know what that disease is. It's a viral infection. And so we're going to use antivirals. We're not going to do herbal formulas like this. So I don't really see a place for this based upon what we know now about IC. It wouldn't be something that I would venture into. I would be much more interested in pursuing lactoferrin and PEA. Sharon says, "I've been putting it off for over a year because of infection in my gums from failed root canals. I'm going to have the first one 11/11. So if I remember correctly, there was a lactoferrin study with periodontal disease. Hold on. When I was going through, yeah, there is. It's amazing I remember these things. Periodontal. So, lactoferrin in saliva represents an important defense factor against bacterial injuries, including those related to strep, and periodontopathic bacteria through its ability to decrease bacterial growth, biofilm development, iron overload, reactive oxygen formation, and inflammatory processes. That is from the National Institutes of Health, National Library of Medicine. Lots of studies. Here we go. Clinical aspects of the use of lactoferrin in dentistry. Now let's just see. So we know that's the case. So let me give you a okay, so that's your study for that. Now let's see if there's a lactoferrin joint replacement study. Lots of leg studies. Lactoferrin is a therapeutic agent for the treatment of inflammatory joint diseases such as osteoarthritis. Here's one, reducing swelling and bone destruction of leg joints. Impact of lactoferrin on bone regenerative process. If it's a promising factor for bone regeneration process in oral surgery. It helps with wound repair and medication-related osteonecrosis of the jaws. So there you go. So, I mean, it's interesting. Sharon, it's interesting. So we have, again, a lactoferrin right on the IC network. You know, hold on. Let me look. I don't know when they're going to start their work tonight. Okay, it's in there, but again, I don't have any product description in there because that all got destroyed. So hopefully the backup will put all that information back in there. Otherwise, I'm going to have to redo it, recreate it all again this week. So Peggy says, hope you're doing better. Peggy, thank you, Peggy. Well, I'm vertical. No, I'm better than I was. Last week I was not doing well. You know, I was just upset. I was just too upset to do a meeting. I was just, you know, you can only take so much, you know, before your body just, I was feeling a little sorry for myself, but I honestly, I just needed to sit and read instead of, you know, it's hard to share your light with somebody else if your light's dim, and my light was very dim last weekend. So anyway, well, all right, my friends, we've been going on here now we started at 1. We've been going on for 3 hours. So I think this has been a good meeting. I will make this offer. If anybody wants to talk to me in Zoom, I will be happy to set up a Zoom meeting right now. Otherwise, I think we are at our natural end of the meeting, and I truly hope you have a great week. And hopefully, knock on wood, please God, please, nothing else this year. We will be back next week. All right, so last call on questions. Donut said her favorite thing to eat and drink was goldfish and apple juice. Hey. Thank you, Marlia. That's very sweet. All right, guys. I will see you later. I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube first. See you, YouTube. Be well.